It is 6:02 p.m. calling to session regular city council meeting for the city of Sunset Valley, Texas for Tuesday, August 4th. And I'll give a few of our tech reminders that you already know if you've been attending our meetings recently. We do have people who are attending via phone only, computer only, and a hybrid of both. You may turn your webcam on so that others can see you, but please do recognize that many people may not have the visibility. And so that goes for myself included. I have the webcams off, so even if you are on camera, I can't see you. And that is important in terms of being recognized. If you want to speak, please use the digital hand raising. And if you're having technical issues, please use the chat feature. Do not use the chat feature to talk about issues or deliberation. It is please use it just to communicate with staff members if you are having a technical issue. And with that, I will move to our first item of the evening, which is item number 2, citizen and public communication. And so if there is anybody in attendance this evening who wants to speak to an item that is not on the agenda, please raise your hand. And again, this is to speak to items not on the agenda. Okay, there are no hands raised for that. Moving to reports for the evening, starting with the mayor's dashboard. Sylvia, if you would please put the dashboard up on the screen. Council members, you already know we're running out of meetings for this session. And by session, I mean prior to the swearing in of new council members. As you can see, the 8:18 agenda is over full. I am hoping that this evening we get through all of our items so that we don't have things pushing down. We do have some council members who are sponsoring more than one item. If you know you're not going to have your backup ready, and by ready I mean complete and ready to post by next Friday, please tell Sylvia, either call her or email her, and remove the item or indicate a later date that you'd like to have that item. And so, Councilmember Gonzalez, there are 3 items that you're sponsoring. Councilmember Reitz, there are 4 items that you're co-sponsoring. Councilmember Ellett and Rosengarten, you also both have multiple items. So again, if you know you're not going to have the backup completely ready, fully cooked, ready to post by next Friday, please either pull the item permanently or let Sylvia know what later date. And if you know now, raise your hand and let me know, and I can go ahead and update it so that we can allocate time and staff resources to the highest priority items. If you have new items that you want to recommend, they are going to be positioned on the 9:15 or later, because as you can see, 9:1 is also full. And of course, that excludes something that is urgent or where a council member insists that it needs to be on an earlier date.
Mayor, one slight correction. Their items are due this Friday because we post on the 13th. So their final draft items are due on the 7th.
Thank you. So yeah, if you're not gonna have your backup completely done by this Friday, thank you, Sylvia. Please pull or bump the item. And again, if you know right now, raise your hand so that I can go ahead and bump the item, and Sylvia and I can proceed this week, putting staff resources to items we know need to post for the 8:18 meeting. We do have a parking survey that, hold on, let me get Councilmember Reitz. Councilmember Reitz, you're self-muted. Councilmember Reitz, did you want to speak?
She's self-muted. Let me send her a request.
Yeah, and Councilmember Reitz, if you can hear us, I think I heard you at the beginning of the meeting indicate that you're on phone and computer. Sometimes if you're on phone and computer, if your phone, you need to unmute your phone, but also on the dashboard on your computer, also make sure you're not muted there. So if you're using phone for audio, you actually need to make sure there's 2 places where you can self-mute yourself. And Councilmember Reitz, I will leave you unmuted on our controls, and please just interrupt me if you do get your audio working. So the next item is that we have a traffic survey. So based on the Lone Oak parking request that was brought up at the last meeting, one of the requests from myself and other council members was to get as much input as possible from the residents. And so we opened up a survey and allowed it to be open to every single residential street, which should allow council members to understand. And we tried to keep it as open-ended as possible so that residents could indicate traffic, which could include speeding, signage, parking, or other. So, even things that maybe we weren't thinking of. There have been, last time I checked, there were 39 responses. For any of the Lone Oak residents who responded to this evening's agenda with parking issues, if you don't mind, if you're willing, if you would also please fill out the survey so that when we do compile the survey results, we have as many residents who have survey and parking and traffic input submitting onto that one location as possible. We hope to submit all of that information along with staff recommendations, which would include potential options to implement things recommended by residents and cost. My hope would be that council can actually take a more organized application and look at what all residents are requesting, prioritize, and then give clear direction to staff as to what items should be implemented, if any, immediately. So we'll keep that open. If there are council members who think it should stay open until September 1, we could do that. But currently the plan is to close the survey when it's time to post for the 8/18 meeting and include the results in that agenda. Do we have any council members who want to speak to agenda planning? And Sylvia, was Councilmember Reitz able to get her microphone working?
I still see her muted, self-muted.
Okay. Councilmember Reitz, it looks like you have a hot mic now. Do you want to try speaking? Okay, and then for council members, for any of the rest of you who are sponsoring items, are there any of those items that you know should be pushed to September 1, or are you all anticipating your items will be completely done, backup prepared, polished by this Friday? Okay, and I'm going to move on. Councilmember Reitz, at any point in the future, just circle back if you get your mic working and we can retouch any agenda items that you wanted to speak to. And so now I will move to the rest of our staff reports, Public Works, Public Safety, and the administrator, and I will allow staff to decide the order they'd like to go in.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. The administrative report is pretty thin this week, and that's because we are working on the budget. It has been turned over by the Budget and Finance Committee, and so we're now in the final throes of assembly to get it ready for submittal for the 12th. We did have a few information requests from hotel occupancy funds, and that was really related to the SFC and the use of the funds, and then also fund balance. We've had no other COVID cases among the staff, knock wood, so that's a good thing. And we are happy to report that Carolyn will talk about it more in her report, but we sent 2 staff to test for Class D licenses. 1 staff came back with a past license, so thank you to the staff who were willing to take the exams, and Mr. Carmona, who helped prep the staff. So now we have our supervisor who is now able to take weekends off. We will be doing another round of testing, and so we'll have the important Class D licenses for our water up and going here very soon. You will have, one of the requests for this council meeting was the lift station plan of action. That's a council item, so I won't go into very much detail here. Carolyn, I'll let you handle the public works report.
And Carolyn, actually, before you move on, council members, do we have any questions for Sylvia or any items that might not be related to other agenda items this evening where you would like to put in a CARS request for Sylvia to include either as a memo to council members between now and the next meeting or to include in the 18th agenda in her admin report? Any requests for information, updates, status on anything? Okay, Carolyn, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I was just going to highlight a few things. So as Sylvia mentioned, we did have one staff member pass the exam and receive his license from TCEQ for his Class D water license. Our other staff member will be testing the middle of this month. I really want to give a thanks to Alfonso for all he did to help prep that. And he's actually volunteered to do another prep session next week. So thank you very much to Alfonso. The other things I wanted to highlight is that the Valley Creek Park program erosion control project has been completed. We've attached some pictures of the before and after of that. We also have completed the cleaning and inspection of some of the sewer lines, and as well as crack sealing on most of the streets. We have one small section we're going to come back and finish, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Carolyn, I did want to have you touch base a little bit on the crack sealing. You're going to see, the council's going to see that expense a little bit higher, and that is truly as we deal with drainage issues and we start dealing with the street sloughing off as, you know, we continue to dig our ditches deeper. So some of our streets are already facing the results of that. And we'll have a report to the council. We have some discussion with the Public Works Committee as we do more intense capital planning, but we will also have a report to the council.
Yes, we did have, it was a lot more crack sealing than we had originally anticipated, specifically on Lone Oak and Sunset and Brody. So they had some significant crack sealing happening on those roads, pretty big, significant, like cracks that they had to actually fill on some of those roads. So you will be seeing some of that, and that'll be part of what we come back. Just to, you know, some things are general maintenance, but also looking at how we develop and build going into the future.
Okay, so
Carolyn, was that the end of your report?
Yes, that is all for now.
Do we have any questions for Carolyn or for the Public Works Department? I'm also including the committees that Carolyn helps with, which are Public Works and P&E. Any questions from council members or anybody else? Okay, Chief, please continue.
He might be muted too. Let's see.
I'm looking for him. There he is. There you go, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just have one item that I want to go over. Over the past 2 weeks, we've had an increase in graffiti in the area of Westgate and Jones. Most of it wasn't in our city limits. It was just outside the city limits. But I do want to thank resident Mark Wells. He's been getting up early in the morning and covering it up, you know, on his own really early in the morning. And it looks like he kind of outlasted the willpower of whoever has been doing that, because over the past few days, we haven't seen any of it. So thanks to Mark and his persistence, and our officers are keeping an eye on it. But we had a few days where there was no graffiti this week. So it looks like, again, he outlasted whoever was doing it. That's really all I have for this report.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any questions for Chief Carter, or any questions that relate to the Public Safety Committee? Councilmember Gonzalez?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, I was, and Mayor, and even Sylvia, I was kind of checking in about the latest. We had planned on starting City Council on the 1st, and I just wanted a public announcement of what the governor's order has extended us to, and what our next projected date is for, or if there is one, for coming back into council chambers and all those sorts of things. Thank you.
No, we do not have a projected date yet. And similar to my position in the past, I would look first to the chief and Sylvia, and assuming Travis County is supporting it, I would then look to Sylvia and the chief to see what their recommendation is. And so no, at this point, we don't have a projected date.
Thank you.
But Chief, Sylvia, by all means, add if you have anything that you can add to that.
No, other than we'll be taking into account not only our ability here, but the health of the staff and the residents who would be trying to attend those meetings.
And Councilmember Gonzalez, I would still be open to doing, to making it so that we just have council members attend in chamber, but I also have not had a consensus of council members indicating that they wish to do that. And then we have the technical difficulty of having multiple phones and laptops. We would have to figure out how to have that while also running a go-to meeting.
Mayor, I'm not actually lobbying for that. I'm merely asking for the update so that it's officially on the record, just because we changed it and we hadn't mentioned it publicly. So I'm not in the lobbying case.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and council members, if there are any of you that feel strongly about reconvening in chambers, please reach out to myself or the chief or Sylvia. But at this point, most of what I've heard from both residents and volunteers is that they do not have that desire. Do we have any other questions for the chief? If so, please raise your hand. And then at this point, if there are any council members who have questions regarding any of the reports that we just went through. And Councilmember Rosengarten, and then I'll reach back out to Councilmember Reitz.
Chief, the Neighborhood Watch program, $80 per sign for 13 signs. You're taking it out of the community partnership budget. Help me understand where that budget is.
Yes, it's the community partnerships budget. I think for this year it's going to be reduced to, I believe we're at 2,500 right now, but it's in the police department's discretionary budget, and then I can find the space in there to purchase those signs. I don't think I'll have to ask for any other funds.
Okay, great. So Neighborhood Watch is on. Okay.
That's what I was hoping, that you guys would say carry on, and we'll make it happen.
Okay.
Chief,
Yep.
similar to the banners that we did, would you be bringing to council a map that shows us where those signs would be located? Would you have the ability to do that for us?
Yes. This project is still underway. I put this in there just to let council know that we were making progress on it, and for you to let me know if there's anything that you wanted to see. So if you want to see where the signs are, I can certainly make a map.
I want to see where the signs are, and where I would be getting as a resident is, for example, in my neighborhood, I think we have one. If there are more than that, then it is as with so much street signage, it just goes to show that you can pass it every day and not see it. There's only one that I have a memory of. And so part of what I would be looking for in the villas would be two questions. One, can we add more? And two, if it's cost prohibitive, is there the ability for residents to purchase and install a sign if for some reason that ends up being one of the prohibitive factors?
Okay.
Do we have any other council members who have questions for staff? And Councilmember Reitz, you're showing up on my directory twice. I've unmuted you in both locations, and it looks like one of your mics is hot. Can you try to speak? And okay, and then Councilmember Gonzalez, I show that your hand is still up. Is that from before, or did you have another comment for staff?
It was from before, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Okay, council members, do we have any other comments for staff reports? Okay, that brings us now to item number 4, which is council consideration of agenda items for approval on consent. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Rosengarten?
Motion to approve on consent agenda item number 7, which is ampersand agency with steering committee recommendations on the 18th of August, and number 10, which is 311 staff reporting.
So I would request that both of those items be pulled. Those are both items where we need input tonight.
By the way, why don't we have any minutes from the last council meeting?
That would be a
They weren't-
question for Sylvia.
Yeah, they were not complete, so we are going to have to double up on the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez, did you want to say something? Okay. We are now going to move to our next item, which is actually a time certain for 6:30. Council members, the next item down. Sylvia, do you think that we can get through item number 6? Is it a 5-minute item, or do you think it's longer than that?
Yes, we can start with either one of those.
Well, I don't want to do the time certain because we're not at 6:30 yet. Do you think item 6, we could get through it in 5 minutes, or?
Yes, 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start item number 6, consider an act on a variance request submitted by 4400 Stearns Lane for a variance of section 4.103 of the Land Development Code, variances and administrative approvals within the critical water quality zone. And this will be a staff report.
Yes, I'm going to let Carolyn take this report, and the applicant is also in the audience, or at least I saw the applicant in there. The applicant is in the audience if there's any questions, the applicant's representative, if there's any questions. Becky, yes, I see Becky. I'm going to unmute Becky and Carolyn. Okay.
Excellent. Okay, so this is a variance request for development within the critical water quality zone, water quality transition zone, and a 75-foot buffer to the critical water quality zone. This is the property that is within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city, and so it is only subject to the city's watershed and signage requirements of the Land Development Code. This is an existing lot. There is an existing building on this lot. It has currently about 17.7% impervious cover on the lot. The applicants are requesting an increase to 17.95% impervious cover. This lot is very deep, and they're wanting to keep the house almost in the same area it currently is. And so that necessitates a pretty long driveway. They are proposing to mitigate for 7,188 square feet of new impervious cover when they kind of take the impervious cover that's existing out and add new impervious cover in. And they will be, we have spoken with the applicant since the posting, and they are in agreement with the staff recommendation to do full mitigation through a vegetative filter strip in lieu of some of the other vegetation, simply because the rainwater tanks, as mentioned in the staff report, they don't offer mitigation once they're full. And so it's more appropriate to do mitigation through the filter strips at this point. The applicant's representative is in the building, in the room with us. And if you have any additional questions, she can answer those as well.
And staff's recommendation is approval of the variance request.
Yes, approval with the full mitigation through the vegetative filter strip.
Correct. And I want to make sure that we touch on that there was mitigation that you required, and they have agreed to all of the mitigation.
Yes.
Thank you, Carolyn and Sylvia. And I'm now going to look to see if we have any questions from council members. I can also entertain a motion at this time. Councilmember Rosengarten.
Hi, yes, the first question I have is in the diagrams of the architect, you can see on the new diagram that the water flow is from the back of the property to the front. What was the water flow on the property previously?
Pull that up. Is this the diagram, Rudy?
Yes.
Okay.
You can see the arrows. The arrows show the direction of the water flowing off the property, but the original one, the one to your left, does not show any of that. I want to know if the water flow has been changed.
No, and Becky, you're muted. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah.
The creek is, well, let me see. Let me orient myself.
The creek is
The
behind
creek
the
is
red.
about, yeah, it's behind the residence, but it's behind a cliff. And so at this point, the applicant, and Becky can back this up too, they're not proposing any kind of changes to the drainage pattern.
No.
You can kind of look at the topo maps there. The lines go in the same direction. They're not changing the direction. It's the water naturally flows from the back toward the front of the property.
Next question. They moved the site wall from the back of the property to the front of the property. Why was that changed?
The site wall is just a stone fence with a kind of a iron railing on the top of it currently, and it's not really in good condition and not very sightly. And so we're proposing to remove that, one, for the impervious cover considerations, and two, just for the aesthetic component. The front wall is actually just a design request by the client. She wants to have kind of a nice stone fence at our entry at the front of the property.
Okay, thank you for that. And with that, I will make a motion that we approve with the 5 findings. And I also want to include the conditions of approval 1 through 7, A, B, C, D, and G.
Okay, and council members that had your hands raised, I lowered them so that I can get, if you please raise your hand if you want to second the motion. Councilmember Medicus, would you like to second the motion?
Yes, Mayor. I'll second the motion.
One thing I want to make sure, Mayor, is that the staff recommends that the vegetative filter strip goes to 20,486 square feet.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, I'd ask
wait,
that the motion make that the second.
Can I say something real quick? Sorry, this
Hold
is
on.
Becky.
Can we confirm that the second agrees with the motion as presented by the motion maker?
So I didn't see that last part.
It's in staff recommendations.
Oh, I agree.
Okay, and then could we, Sylvia or staff, could you please repeat the motion so that everybody is clear on exactly what the motion maker and second have made?
I can repeat it.
Thank you.
All right. I move that we approve with the findings. There's 5 of them. Then I move that we include the conditions of approval, which is 1 through 7. 7 then has A, B, C, D, and G. Staff also recommends increasing the size of the vegetative filter strip to 20,486 square feet to account for the full amount of new impervious cover. The filter strip should also be located closer to the main structures. That is the
Thank you.
motion.
And great. And do you have any additional comments or questions before I move on to the other council members?
No.
Okay, thank you. Second, Councilmember Medicus, do you have any other comments or questions before I move to the other council members?
No, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, hold
we
on.
need
Hold on. Council members, if you would please raise your hand, I will recognize you, and then we will move back to the applicant and staff. Do we have any additional questions or comments from council members? And Councilmember Reitz, I see that your hand is raised. You are unmuted, but I do not see that you have a hot mic. It looks as if you might be on a phone where you need to enable by putting in the audio pin. I will move to the next council member, Councilmember Ellett.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, we
can
can
you
hear you.
recognize me?
Yes.
No, I was going to second. I had my hand raised earlier. I was going to second Councilmember Rosengarten's motion.
Okay,
I'm
great.
sorry.
No questions or comments on the item?
No.
Okay, great. Council members, any additional questions? And then Becky, if you'd please raise your hand if you did want to add anything before we vote on the item, and then same for staff if there's anything else that needs to be added before I call for a vote. Council members, if you would please submit, and actually Councilmember Reitz, if you have a question that is relevant before we vote, submit it through the chat and we can have Sylvia answer it. And Councilmember Reitz, I see your question. I don't know if Sylvia has tried, she's probably tried texting you. If you're on your phone, maybe try dialing in again, listen to the cues, enter the entry code to enter the room, and then wait for the second cue, which is to enter the audio control pin. That's what will allow you to mute and unmute yourself. Council members, if you would please submit your votes via chat. And Sylvia, when you have a vote from all of the council members, if you would please read it back.
just waiting on Councilmember Reitz. I see Councilmember Reitz's hand up, but she's offline. So I'm not sure. She's having computer difficulties, it appears. Oh, okay. Councilmember Reitz voted yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Ellett, yes. Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Rosengarten, yes.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember Reitz, let me see if I see that Councilmember Reitz is showing that she's offline. And then I show that she's also on via phone. So she may need a staff member to call her and just walk through, like maybe shutting everything down and then re-logging in. If there's, Sylvia, if there's a staff member other than you that could call her and help her with that.
Okay.
And with that, I will move us to our time certain item, which is item number 5. Consider an act, oh, and just for the record, item number 6 passes unanimously. Item number 5 is consider an act on a variance request submitted by the barn located at 6218 Brody Lane for a variance of section 4.301D of the Land Development Code regarding impervious cover calculations. And we will start with the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. I will take this one. Again, similar to the property on Stearns, the barn located on Brody is within the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction. And as such, it only is required to meet the watershed and sign sections of the Land Development Code. The applicant is seeking a variance for increased impervious cover, which is a variation of 4.301H, which is no lot shall exceed 18%. They are also asking for essentially a reclassification calculation of existing impervious cover, which is section 4301B, C, and BD. Currently, our code requires all impervious cover that is driven on to be considered 100% impervious. There is no credit given for crushed granite or anything that isn't compacted other than walking surfaces and some very specific items in the code. So in order for under the Sunset Valley's code, in order for the council to find the ability to grant a variance, and this is not just in Sunset Valley's code, but the first thing is that it's not a self-imposed hardship. And in Sunset Valley, we have 5 additional points: that there are special circumstances or conditions affecting the land, that the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment, granting of the variance will not be detrimental to public health and safety, and granting of the variance will not have the effect of preventing orderly development, and that the proposed development meets water quality standards equal or better to than had we not proceeded with the variance. The applicant is online and also submitted a letter how they believe that they would meet their findings. Their engineer also submitted a letter regarding the 50% impervious cover calculation. Staff's recommendation is denial of the variance request based on the following. That the first one is one, not a self-created hardship. The applicant clearly has the ability to designate other land uses on the property. Number one for us is strict application would deprive the applicant of reasonable and economic use. That is not the case. There are, the property is actually not subject to zoning or building codes, so there's actually greater flexibility within that building site other than the watershed and signs. The variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right of the applicant. Actually, no, the property's current land use is in perpetual conflict with its neighboring residential property. We held a public meeting where the neighbors are actually considering an HOA because they're concerned with traffic and parking. And so the thought was perhaps some additional parking on this site would mitigate some of that off-site necessary parking and eliminate some of the danger, but I'll touch on that in the next one. So point 3 is will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare or injurious to other properties in the area. So the neighbor's chief complaint is parking, noise, and loitering. So expanding the use, in staff's opinion, in my opinion, would exacerbate the condition. And because the property is not subject to zoning or building, it's difficult to determine, in my mind, if the requested spaces of 18 additional spaces would even meet the requested eventual overall expansion plans of the property. In the applicant's letter, she stated she wanted the site to be very similar to Green Hall. Obviously, in proximity to the residential areas around it, that's not a compatible use. And then item number 4, granting the variance will not have the effect of preventing the orderly development. So the impervious cover requirements in the compaction are determined to meet the city's needs, not the other way around. So modifying any existing impervious cover calculations does give us an issue, because there are many, many spaces in this city who use crushed granite as parking, or has been used when in our residential areas, for example, when somebody wants to do a long driveway, those things count against them in impervious cover. The applicant right before this specifically had a different layout that was proposed. And then the water quality will be equal or better to had the development proceeded without the variance. So the applicant's engineer has calculated that increasing impervious cover for the 18 additional spaces would be handled by the existing water quality pond. So based on the fact that in my mind and in staff's mind, it doesn't meet a great portion of the city council's findings for a variance, that the council deny the variance request. And again, Ms. Dunn is available if the applicant would like to address.
And first, do we have any council questions related to the presentation? Councilmember Rosengarten.
Now this question is directly to Anita Dunn. Anita, do you have the ability to get a parking agreement with Lowe's?
Anita, if you would please raise your hand so that I can unmute you.
Okay, can
And
you hear me?
Roxy, yes, Anita, you are unmuted, and Roxy, you are also unmuted if there is any legal response that you have to Councilmember Rosengarten's question. Go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, first of all, I didn't hear anything that Sylvia said. Cut out, cut out, cut out. So I really have no clue what was being said there. I heard, last thing I heard was something about something the people on the street are considering, so. Hello?
Anita, I basically repeated what's in the staff report almost verbatim.
Okay. Okay, so I'll have to read that later. What is it
So
what is it
Councilmember
that,
Rosengarten posed the question if you could enter, if there was a possibility of entering into a parking agreement with Lowe's.
no, because we did talk to Doug, and he himself would have been amenable to it, but this policy is that if it's an alcohol establishment, they're not allowed to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional, Anita, and if you would keep your hand up, Anita, that helps me because it keeps you at the top of my directory. Do we have any other council questions for staff members? And once we've depleted the council questions, I will then look to see if there are any other questions from the public for either staff or for the applicant. Councilmember Reitz.
Okay, let's try this again. Is it working?
We can hear you.
This is my third computer. Okay, my question is for staff. I know on the trails we have used a permeable type of concrete. Is this a permissible material to use for this parking lot?
Not in our current code. Our current code does not give any allowances for permeable concrete or crushed granite or compacted granite.
Okay,
And
so there's
Sylvia,
no other types of coverings that a person could actually park on that would be considered permeable.
Not sure who's ringing. There's a multitude of ways to handle water on the site, and what you'll find in cities that are really as stringent as Austin is, they hold water underground. They build a retention pond basically under the parking lot, and they build a parking lot over it. There's not a whole lot of leftover space on this particular property. I mean, I guess the short answer is the engineer could present something, but our code is very stringent. Anything that the engineer proposes would have to come to council for an approval.
Okay.
and Sylvia, isn't part of the, in responding to Councilmember Reitz's question, part of it is not just an issue of, is it a pervious material or not? Because in the example of the trails, it's pervious concrete, but it's not being compacted by cars and it doesn't have the pollutants from the cars. So when you're talking about a parking lot, there is that difference. It's not just an issue of if it's pervious.
Correct. There's the pollutant issue, and we do have exemptions within the code for walking surfaces, specifically of a certain width. This parking lot doesn't meet that exemption.
Councilmember Reitz, do you have additional questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ellett.
Thank you. I've got two questions actually of staff. First one is in reference to the applicant's letter. I don't know if you can bring that back up. And I just want confirmation of what this is saying because I don't fully understand it. It's paragraph 2 under the title parking. The lack of parking is our main concern. We currently have about 18 spaces. The capacity of the bar is 95, so we do not even meet the 3-person per parking spot rule. I'd like to comment from staff on that. And the second question I have, and I believe I know the answer to this, I assume all of the areas of crushed granite are compacted and are compacted by vehicular traffic. Is that correct?
Correct. So the per person parking rule is really a building code designation. There are specific parking ratios for gathering spaces for bars and those kinds of things. I'm not sure of the 3-person per parking spot rule because it's normally based on a square footage. That was also another one of my concerns is I know that we're not subject to the building code in that area, but I asked, would the additional parking spaces meet any future plans as well? Because one of my main concerns is exacerbating an already contentious issue with the neighbors. And so adding additional parking may or may not resolve that issue in the future.
And if I may, I said 2 questions. Can I add a third one? I think the applicant's point may well be, and I'd like staff feedback on this, that by increasing the impervious cover, they could provide more parking spots and then take some of the congestion off of Countrywide. And I think I know the response there, but I'd like just to hear the response to that statement if they were to make that.
From staff or the applicant?
From staff, and then I'm sure the applicant will make the same point, raise that point.
Sure. On the surface, it appears that giving additional parking spaces will alleviate the Countrywide and the parking issues. However, again, the alternative is to reduce the building size to match the current parking spaces that are already there. There is business going in and out through the food trucks, which really aren't even counted in any of this area. So there's actually, from a building standpoint, there's actually more occupancy than what's shown through the existing buildings because you have people coming in and out for the trailers. Even though they don't stay very long, they are coming in and out and taking up a parking space during the time they're there.
Okay, thank you.
Anita, would you like to add anything before I move to the additional?
Yeah, I have a statement here I needed to make, and I'm sure Ed Moore would like to chime in on his calculations for the extra water going into the pond. So I think that before we get discussing all of this, I think it would be a good idea to perhaps clarify exactly what it is we're talking about here. So yeah, so to start with, I wanted to make a correction to my submittal on the last page when talking about the amount of parking for the impervious cover. I have in there 9,800. That's supposed to be 65, so that's going to change it somewhat. In the big scheme of things, it'll all come out in the end, but I just wanted to make that clear that the amount of impervious cover we're looking for the parking area is 6,500 square feet, not 9,500, which brings the total down to 4,400. So, I'm sorry, 44% as opposed to the 18%. But having said that, I also would like to talk about the meeting we had some weeks ago with the people on the street. I didn't quite hear, Sylvia, what you were saying about what they are considering, because I couldn't hear what you were talking about there, and I didn't see that anywhere in the
I repeated to the council that it was a contentious meeting regarding parking and noise that ended in the chief having to mute several folks in the meeting.
Yeah, And also in the meeting, the people, it was contentious, yes, but there was agreement made through all of that. And thank you, Chief Carter, for doing that for us. The meeting ended with the citizens the residents on Countrywide Lane going to the county to ask them if they would put up some neighborhood parking signs. And I think Joe could probably chime in on that because he was there at that meeting. We also discussed the music, which was, when we initially started the bar a couple of years ago, we had a meeting with all the people on the street, except one person. And we decided that at that time we would bring the music indoors. The agreement was reached collaboratively. It was everything was fine, and we had no problems with that. We also at that meeting talked about the parking, which is the huge issue, and it was discussed about I would apply to the council for a variance for more parking, because when you look at it, the parking on the street that's normal everyday business parking, and our bar has a capacity to hold 95 people, so we are underparked to meet the needs of the building. So if the parking were granted for the extra 18 or 19, whatever it is, places, that would take the weight off the street on the everyday business hours. So we did discuss that, and as I said, even though it was contentious, there was certain agreements reached. With the music, when we first opened 2.5 years ago, we had the meeting and agreed to bring the music inside. Now with the COVID, we were opening again, and we had to go outside by law, so we went down by the barn. So in discussing with the people on the street how to fix that, I went to some business people, and they suggested putting a covered deck there, much to the tune of what Green Hall has done down in New Braunfels. So I reluctantly said, all right, well, let's run with that. Since I'm seeing that there is a lot of resistance to that, I have decided that the best thing to do for this particular meeting is to withdraw that. So I am no longer going to discuss anything building onto the barn, any covered deck or anything like that. We will wait until we're open again, and we will bring our music back into the bar as we initially were doing, and when we're allowed. And other than that, much like everything else, we'll eat the cost of having no music or very little music until the time we're open again and we're allowed to have everybody inside. So we'll work on that ourselves. So consider that withdrawn. I'd like Ed to talk about the parking in terms of the water quality pond that has the capacity to hold twice the water and then some, to keep the water on site like it was designed to do, to treat the water and then put the water back on our property. So the extra parking that we're talking about is already mitigated through the water quality pond that Ed will attest to his years of expertise as an engineer that the water pond can indeed hold what we're proposing it to hold. The other one we haven't got to yet, the food court. If you like, I could go into that now, or we can just talk about that later. So that's entirely up to you. So that's kind of what I had to say. The meeting itself, yes, was contentious, but you know, the whole thing was bringing it in off the street. And we have to remember that on that street, we applied for our license. We put posters up. We sent letters to all of the people on the street about the liquor license and everything. We had no communications whatsoever. There was no complaints, no objections. We opened our bar and everything was running fine. We had, you know, Bart and Alice, they all seem to be doing okay with it. And we are willing to meet, you know, any kind of an agreement as we proved back 2.5 years ago. So the issue on Countrywide Lane, from everything that I've seen and talked with the sheriffs and what have you, is the last person to move on to Countrywide Lane at 3612 Countrywide Lane. He moved in 4 or 5 months before our bar was open. So he bought a property knowing full well that there was a business coming on the street ready to open. And yet he is the one who is basically causing the problems. We were there for quite some time, 10 years, talking with Bart and Alice and everybody about this. And we had no communications at all, nothing negative. Even with the back in the curling center, we had nothing negative. As a matter of fact, Kay Angel, who passed recently, she came into the city council meetings and she was all for the Austin Curling Center. So, you know, to say that the street is contentious, I don't think that's true at all. I think there's one person on the street who bought into the situation knowing there was a bar there, and now he's trying to, I don't know, whatever he's trying to do is cause trouble and create havoc where really none should exist, when we're always quite willing to do what we have to do to make the people on Countryway Lane comfortable with the business that we have going. So I needed that to be said. And I think that Ed needs to talk about the pond in terms of the quality of its design and its capacity.
Thank you. Do we have any additional council members who have questions at this time? Councilmember Rosengarten.
Sylvia, reading number 1 on the response of no, property lies in the ETJ of the city of Sunset Valley and is therefore not subject to zoning or building codes. Well, tonight we're not talking about zoning nor building codes. We're talking about only the watershed. Moving from 18% impervious cover to 44% impervious cover. This property is still less restrictive than properties within the corporate limits. It is known that crushed granite is not 100% impervious cover, even when you drive on it. Engineers will answer that way all day long. My husband's an engineer. We can't solve that dilemma tonight. It's about changing policy. Is there anything that you can think of that you dealt with in the past in another city, if there was something similar to this, and what was some of those solutions?
Quite frankly, council member, this one's a toughie because it fronts Brody, a very busy street, and then it backs up to the residential. I think the fact that we don't have any consistency from the Dunns in terms of inside, outside, we promise to be inside, we promise not to be outside, it begins to have a compatibility issue with the neighborhood. If there was some ability to prevent parking on Countryway, then, you know, maybe that's the ability to give them the impervious cover and they handle it all on site. However, the neighbors are trying to go to an extreme effort of going to an HOA and closing the street off and making a private street, which is, you know, very difficult to do. I don't have an easy answer for you other than trying to work it out amicably between all of the parties. And right now, I don't feel like we are at an amicable point in time.
Okay. Another question for this one for Anita Dunn. Is there a way you could set up a partnership with Uber where everybody that comes onto your property has to use an Uber? Now, you direct it. They can park over at Tony Burger if you get that permission, and then Uber drive them over to your property. Is that something you would consider looking into?
Am I unmuted? Okay, I will answer that question in terms of making an arrangement with Uber or any other company. We've already been doing that. We offer discounts. We offer, you know, 10 stamps, whatever, you get a free drink. We are already doing that. It's not something that we can do. That's something people have to buy into. That's not something that I can sell them. And it's an unusual thing for a bar to have to do that. So what we're saying here is that if we had the amount of parking that our bar needs, then there would be very little problems on the street. And in terms of adding impervious cover, we're not looking for 44%. And I'm sorry to go on here because I'm just responding to things that were said previously. The parking lot would add a 9% impervious cover to the already existing 18. The dance hall down there at the deck, I've already taken that off there. The food court would add another 11%. So if that were granted, so really the parking lot is 9% and the food court is 11% for a total of 38. Without the food court, what we're asking for is 27% impervious cover. And I think that given the fact that we bought the property based on sanctioning of Sunset Valley, that impervious cover was needed, and that we were sanctioned to buy the property after 7 months of feasibility study. I was sent back to council. We got a message from Clay Collins the next morning that they gave a clear message. We closed on the property 2 weeks later. So here we are 10 years later, and we're still fighting for that variance for our parking. So it seems to me that these things have already been discussed in enormous detail, and we've tried to defend it very often. We agreed to build a water quality pond that far exceeds the necessary for such a small parking area, and it can withhold the weight of another 18, 20 parking spaces, whatever it determines. So I think that us having to go outside looking for parking from Lowe's, or to buy parking spaces from other people, or make agreements with whoever, I don't think that that's really where we need to go. It's a very uncertain process. And right now, given where we are with the business closed and likely to be the last to open, these are not uncertainties that Dennis and I can take on. The certainty that we need here is the fact that we need the impervious cover for the extra parking. That was sanctioned 10 years ago, March 1st, 2011, it was sanctioned, and we're still fighting for that. So I think Ed can justify it. We spent $350,000 on a water quality pond for 18 parking spaces, knowing full well that it could hold more. So I think now is time to seriously talk about bringing our business to where it needs to be, so we can put this behind us and move on with our business, take the parking off the street, bring it onto our property, and there should be no other problems with people on the street having issues with road parking. So I think that's where we are in this situation. I know 44% sounds like a lot, but when you think about every commercial business in Sunset Valley, there's acres and acres of concrete. And every one of them has somewhere anywhere from 25 to 50 to 75% impervious cover. We have mitigated for what we're asking for already, and we thought we might get that 10 years ago, and we're still fighting for the same thing. So I would hope that you would give some serious consideration to bringing us up to the speed that we need to be and where we entered into this agreement in the first place.
Mayor, can I continue asking questions?
Yes, and actually before you ask the next question, Sylvia, can you, just to make sure we're keeping information straight, do you know what, if we took a snapshot of the last 5 or 10 years, what impervious cover has been granted for new businesses?
Sorry, I was muted. Not off the top of my head, no, I cannot.
Okay. The last two that I know of are the Brody Homestead and ATS Engineering, and they were at or near 18%. And how do you, as city administrator and legal, the issue of the pond being able to retain more, how does that butt up against our impervious cover restrictions? Because I don't think that one negates the other.
Well, the whole purpose of the impervious cover is water quality. And so that was one of the requests of Mr. Moore, is making sure whatever is added can be handled. Not just handled, but treated and left better than it was when it arrived on the site and passed through the site. I didn't get an answer on quality. I got an answer on capacity. So again, Mr. Moore is available if you want to ask him that question.
No, I don't have that question. I don't have that question for her professional. I have that question for us as a city. If we were to assess that, who provides the answer to that for us? I would assume it's not that we rely on the third party expert for the applicant, that is important for the application, but that somewhere within the city there has to be somebody that confirms that.
Yes, her engineer would submit the requirements and then our third party would review all of those requirements.
Has that happened?
No.
So then we can't consider that. That's a question. We can't consider that if it's not part of what you have put together for us to consider.
No, our Miller Gray contract has not reviewed her engineering documents, no.
Okay. Councilmember Reitz?
Yes, thank you. In your mayor's dashboard is a impervious cover commercial listing of.
Yes, thank you.
So to pull that up.
It's on tab 1, Sylvia, line 4. And so that was provided to me from staff. And that was based on a similar question to this that I had in the past. And so that shows
It's taking me back to the link. It's pulling up.
and so while it's pulling up on your screen, because I have it pulled up on my screen, ATS engineering is at 17.95%. And Enviro Plan is at 17.97%. And certainly it's correct if you're looking at the last 20 years of development, there are many locations that are well above that. And then the Brody Homestead is at 18%.
So my thought process on the other development that is a lot higher in the 70s is the city also entered into settlement agreements that led to all of the other green spaces, right? So nobody came in to just build that much impervious cover without mitigating in some way, shape, or form, and the city went to legal extremes to get that done.
Well, and the city changed its requirements to 18%. So that's a huge, if you were, looking at the history of development in the city, there's a reason that the most 3 recent developments, EnviroPlan, ATS Engineering, and the Barn, they're all at or under 18%. It's because the city changed its ordinances.
Yeah, the PDF is not pulling up, Mayor. I apologize.
Yeah. So those, Councilmember Reitz, if you were looking at it, those are the 3. The Brody Homestead is 18%. EnviroPlan is 17.97%, and ATS Engineering is at 17.95%. The outlier is Longhorn Steakhouse, and that was a redevelopment of Red Robin, which was part of the existing commercial development at the time, and they were granted 42.9%. Council members, do we have additional questions? Councilmember Rosengarten, you are still unmuted. I don't know if you had additional questions.
I gave up.
Do we have any additional questions from council members? Joe Koizen, you have the floor.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Well, listen, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this tonight. A lot of things were already discussed that I was going to touch on, but I just wanted to make clear that I'm the only Sunset Valley resident on Country White Lane. There are 6 other homes, which I think are all in the ETJ, and then there's the barn. And so I bought the house in summer 2017, and so the bar and the barn were already there. I've only ever known this street with the bar at the end of the street. And I should say that I'm a fan of the barn. You know, I like having the food trailers down there and being able to go down for some live music occasionally. I see as a benefit to living on the street. But having said that, I'm also the new guy on the street. I haven't lived here for all that long. Some of my neighbors have been here for 50 years. And so they're seeing a lot of change on that street, on this street, and that's you know, causing them some problems. I also see the traffic, you know, on occasion when the bar is crowded. There are, you know, cars parked on Country White Lane. They don't really ever make it down as far as my end of the street because I'm pretty far down there. And so I really don't have those parking problems or the traffic problems. If I am driving through there, I'm past it in a couple seconds and it's no big deal for me. Similarly, I hear the music, but I'm kind of far enough away that it really doesn't bother me. And quite frankly, it's usually over by about 10 or 11 on a Friday or Saturday night, and that's okay for me. And so that's kind of my perspective on the bar. But one of the things that's a real concern for me is that it is a big problem for some of my neighbors. Whether that's completely justified or not, I'll let others decide, but there is controversy on the street. And what I'm witnessing is, you know, some issues that are causing me to actually bring the chief of police in and say, hey, I'd like you to take a look at some of the actions that are going on the street, because we were getting served with HOA documents. And for the record, I am not an advocate of forming an HOA. I do not want to be a part of one, especially in order to privatize the road and erect a gate to fortify my end of the street. That is not where my head is at. I'm looking for some opportunity for a conflict resolution, you know. I'd like there to be more harmony on my street. And when Anita approached me that she was having a variance come up and asked for my support or my voice, I said I would be glad to give that, but I really need to hear from Sunset Valley first and better understand what your variance is asking for and how does it match up against the codes and the rules. And so I do understand that staff is recommending denying this request, and I support that. I'm not asking council or anybody to change their minds on that. But I would like to go on record to say that as a consequence of that denial, and if the bar continues to operate as it has, the parking issues and the traffic problem will continue to be a thorn in the side of some of my neighbors. And that usually results in police calls. Travis County Sheriff is on the street all the time, and so are Sunset Valley officers, and that's a problem for me. And so I don't know what the solution is, but I throw it back to you guys to kind of do some brainstorming or conflict resolution, compromise in some way to relieve some of that tension that's on the street as a result of all of this. I think that's it from me.
Thank you, Joe. Councilmember Rosengarten.
Joe, speaking on that, that's exactly where I'm trying to go. How can we solve the major issue, which is parking? So number one, can we get an agreement with Lowe? The answer is no, due to the fact that they are selling alcohol at the barn. Number two, can they get an agreement with Tony Burger Center and do something there to where people then Uber drive over? She hasn't tried that. That's something I would recommend that the Dunns try. Partnering with Uber, that when people come to your place that they have to use Uber. It's a good thing. If they're going to drink, they're not driving on the streets. They're using Uber at least. We know that other businesses do it. Garza Strip nearby is fully developed. They had to mitigate in order to have all the concrete they have at their property. But Sunset Valley is limited to 18% impervious cover. So what is that solution, that key point? Is it that we need to change policy and that crushed granite is not 100% impervious? Is it 50%? And if it is 50%, what does that put the Dunn's property at then at that point? That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Rosengarten, is there a specific question in there that you want answered that relates to what we're considering tonight, which is to either approve or deny the variance?
I'm giving information and saying this is where we're at. I do not have a question, but to say the question was, can we change policy with 3 votes, yes, to where crushed granite is not considered 100% impervious cover? So the question would be to do research and find out if the crushed granite is 50% impervious cover, not 100. What percentage would she be at? Would she be at 18% or not? As the property is right now, not with all the additional opportunities she's looking for. Thank you.
Councilmember Reitz?
Yes. May I talk?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. So I would support a little research on that. Also, I would like to understand her current mitigation, which is her pond, and how much that is actually how much that actually mitigates. And so I would sort of suggest that maybe Ms. Dunn come back with a new proposal where the proposal is only for the parking area. And that's the 6,500 or so, if I understood correctly. And what all that would entail, and particularly when it came to her existing mitigation with her pond. I do think that parking issue on the street would be an issue. It has to be a huge issue for the residents there, and I totally understand that. And so so that is my suggestion to Ms. Dunn, that we look at what is the calculation for her mitigation at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez, you have the floor.
Mayor, it would be difficult to proceed on the previous 2 recommendations from the other council members without.
I agree. I completely agree. The only thing that council can consider tonight is to either approve or deny what is in front of you. The applicant can pull it to redo it.
Mayor,
but
you're interrupting me.
I know, but just to be clear for the record, because we're starting to get quite off track. Yes, I understand.
We actually could do what they're asking. It would not be because we could bring it back. It is related. But the problem with doing that is that there's impacts to the entire change of code. And
yes, absolutely.
To do that. And we would also have to consider how many properties that would impact in the entire city. And it's a whole code thing. So it's not going to be a short answer. And so I'm not saying that it's actually off topic. It won't be a short answer,
but it could come back. But in terms of tonight, the only thing that council can consider is what's in front of them. And yes, if it comes back based on Councilmember Reitz or Councilmember Rosengarten's suggestions, it won't just be what are the possibilities if we look at it this way. You are correct. It would be how does this impact existing properties? What would we be giving as an allowance to existing properties and also future development?
Okay, so I just wanted that on the record, and someone should probably make a motion, and it's not me.
I agree. Councilmembers, do we have a motion? Councilmember Ellett?
I'm sorry, I actually raised my hand before you asked that question, but I just want to clarify what you just said, Madam Mayor. There are 3 possible decisions that could be made tonight. One is to approve, one is to disapprove, or the applicant could withdraw their request at this time. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And the items that were brought up by Councilmember Reitz and Rosengarten, should they want to sponsor that, they can work with the city administrator to sponsor, variations to our current ordinances and options to what we consider impervious, and specifically with parking lots, what we would be able to consider, and Councilmember Gonzalez is correct, if we were to go down that path, we have to consider how it impacts the entire city.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Medicus?
I make a motion to deny the request.
Thank you. We have a motion. I'm going to put the hands down of all the other council members. If we do have a second, if there's a council member who wants to second that, would you please raise your hand? We have a motion to deny. Do we have a second? Councilmember Gonzalez?
She's self-muted.
I'll second.
Thank you. Does the motion maker or second have any questions, comments, or qualifications to the motion before we move to questions and answers from the public?
Yes, Mayor, this is Councilmember Medicus. One of the concerns I've had over the past couple of years are the different variances that we've given. And if we need to update our code, then we should do that. But we do need to take into consideration how that affects all of Sunset Valley and our ETJ. And so in light of that, this could come back if we do change the code to recalculate crushed granite at 50%, but I think that's going to take some time to get going. And if you look at decomposed granite, it's considered hardscape. So I think that's going to take us some time to get through all of that and any changes that might occur in our ordinances. So for tonight, this is where I want to go.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember Gonzalez, did you want to add anything before we move to other comments?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Do we have any additional comments or questions from council members before we move to the public? And Anita, I've seen your hand go up and down a few times. If you would please raise it if you're wanting the floor. Alice, you have the floor. Alice, you are self-muted, but you,
okay.
Yes, you. Now we can hear you.
Thank you for letting me say a few words. And I come in here. Anita didn't invite me here. I heard that this is going on from Joe. I'm kind of agree with what Joe said. My house is right across street from Countrywide Lane, directly from the barn. Actually, my property is always affected when they have more parking. They parked right on my side of my road, south side of my property. I also wish for this time of the period, for the COVID-19, and we all can help each other, especially help the small business grow or help them survive. Honestly, I'm not too happy with my property always piled with the cars, but I wish you all can consider maybe they redo the engineer plan or do something, maybe not a 44% impervious cover or a little bit less immediate. So give them a little more parking space so that will easy out the people parking on my property. That's what I wish. So I do not want to become a homeowner association member. I by myself own my own property, and I just want to have a good neighborhood, a good Sunset Valley environment, but I really want to hope everybody find a compromise and to help small business, help the Countrywide Lane residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional comments from the public? And while we're waiting to let those queue up, Chief, I have a question for you. Are there any parking restriction options? And I do know it's unique since it's not it's ETJ. Are there any options that the street has to limit commercial parking from the bar on their street other than making it a private street?
No, I mean, they could go with, they would have to work probably with the county, but they could possibly go with some sort of permitted um, parking. But other than that, no, I can't think of any that would eliminate street parking.
And so that, similar to what we've done and suggested on various streets in Sunset Valley in the last few years, they could pursue that option, which is to allow residents to have a certain number of permits, which then allows anybody who's not connected to a resident to restrict their ability to park. They could do that. And is that even really, is it plausible for them? In Sunset Valley, it's a little bit easier because the people have more direct contact to City Hall. How hard would it be for them to actually do that?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would be working with the county commissioners on that. I don't know.
Okay, and that's who they would have to get that approved through, is through Commissioner's Court.
More than likely.
Okay, and there's nothing that we can do to offer them any control.
No, not for the street parking. I mean, the answer for them at this point is, yeah, that more people are able to park on the bar's property.
And when calls are made, I in response to what Joe brought up, are calls related to issues? Are those going into Travis County 911, or is it SVPD that's typically called out first, or is it Travis County?
I don't know, the calls go to Travis County initially, but our officers are generally closer, so we end up responding with them.
And would you say that you're responding to those once a month, 10 times a month? Is there any estimate of frequency?
Maybe twice a month. And then it hasn't been, since COVID started, we haven't been going, but
And are they noise related, parking related, or drinking related?
it's all, it'll be noise. And then when people leave the bar, there's some, disorderly conduct, blocked driveways, urinating in public, the typical things that happen around bars.
Thank you. Perry, you have the floor, and you're currently the only resident that I have. If there's anybody else who wishes to speak during public comments, if you would please raise your hand now before we call for a vote. Perry, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. This particular development has quite a history. It started out as a curling center. It's always been a square, round peg trying to fit a square hole kind of thing. I think the original request also asked for lots of changes and rules so they could do what they wanted to do. I understand property owners and they want to act in their own self-interest, and if they can get rule changes, they'll go for them, but that doesn't mean we have to do it. What the council has before them tonight is based on what was submitted to them tonight. The council has been, I think, graciously spent a lot of time trying to figure out workarounds and things could be done if they would be done. And if we changed rules, perhaps it would be better for the property owner of this particular property. But tonight, what the council has to do is look at what they submitted, evaluate it based on those 5 questions. The staff has recommended denial on 4 out of the 5 questions. Plus, on the water quality question, did not recommend the staff basically punted. They said, yeah, they can address volume, water volume, but they haven't talked about water quality per se. This is the applicant's water quality engineer. The city will have to vet that in order to determine if it meets the criteria for water quality that the rest of for everybody who's subject to the water quality ordinance is required to meet. It's pretty straightforward and clear that that the application as submitted tonight doesn't meet the criteria required for a variance, and I think the council has to turn this down. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call for public comment. And Anita, it looks like your hand keeps going up and down, so I'm gonna recognize you, and then if there's anybody else with your group who wishes to speak, let me know so that I can unmute them. Is there anything that you would like to add? You do have the floor.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Thank you. First of all, this is kind of frustrating because I'm hearing motions going around and we haven't even finished discussing this yet. I didn't hear from our engineer, although he said he spoke. I don't remember hearing it. He had his hand raised. We have yet to review this. I sent this in last week and it was supposed to be reviewed by an engineer. That's what I understood because I had it in on time. The engineer, our engineer, Ed, is talking about not only the fact that the 50% impervious cover of granite, he's gone beyond that. What he's saying, if he had a chance to speak and if this had been reviewed, was that the parking lot, if you even count the extra parking as 100% impervious, the water quality pond can still handle that water and it can still process that water and it can still put that water back on our property. So we're talking about things that we're motioning things and we're not even done talking about them yet. So I don't see how we can make a motion right now to deny anything. We haven't even discussed the food court and what my concerns with that. Again, so if this is just going to be all washed under the rug here and not discussed and just denied and I'm supposed to go away, that hardly seems fair. I hardly get a chance to speak and my engineer didn't even have a chance to talk yet. So yeah, so I mean, I'm having issues with this. And I don't think we're changing any rules here. Again, I can address the 5 questions that were answered by whoever from Sunset Valley answered these. And I can respond very directly to every single one of those. Because, when you talk about asking for more parking to take the weight off the street, that's exactly what it's for. Because our building doesn't have enough parking to accommodate the number of people, the 95 and 3% person per car. We don't even have enough to meet that model. So it seems to me that, if I could get a chance to even answer some of these questions here, or do some kind of rebuttal. If my engineer could have a chance to speak up here and tell you exactly what his determination is. You guys are not engineers. You can't read over. I can't read it over. You can't read that over and make any determination on what he is or isn't saying there. So I mean, this meeting. I mean, if you want to end the meeting, well, I can withdraw it all. But I mean, just to have a vote on it just seems a little premature since we have yet to discuss the third part of the request. So what is happening here? I mean, you could be rushing this through and I'm not getting a chance to speak. We're not getting a chance to speak. It's already been it's a foregone conclusion. Why did we ever come here? If we were just going to say, nope, that's it. We're not asking you to change rules. That pond can hold 100% impervious cover and twice the parking that we have now. So no, what you're voting on is wrong here. You don't understand what you're voting on. And again, if you want to go back to 10 years ago when we brought the curling center in here, we didn't buy the property. Again, I repeat, we didn't buy the property. We gave the city of Sunset Valley over 7 months to do a due diligence on this. We attended meetings. We spent $60,000, $70,000 on engineer drawings. We went to the meetings and Sunset Valley never once said, no, we don't want that. You need to go away. They sent it back to council and sanctioned it being a commercial property. knowing full well we needed a variance, and we were asking at that point in time, I think it was 29% for enough parking and put the building on there. So there was no 44%, and we weren't asking for anything out of the ordinary. And if you have a variance process, if your rules are that carved in stone, why have a variance process at all? You know, you're just wasting time. If you're going to walk in and say, no, there's no variance is going to be handed out here. I went through your records for the last 12 years. Every single agenda I went through, and I picked out every impervious cover request in the last 12 years, and commercial and residential, and every single one of them were approved except one. And I don't have to tell you who that one was. So here, you know, this is being rushed through. We haven't even had a chance to discuss this yet. You know, and I mean, I can keep repeating myself. The point is that I'm making, this was sanctioned 10 years ago by the city of Sunset Valley. I have the email, the clear message, fine, Clay Collins, we're going to buy the property in 2 weeks. We will work with you. We'll take those $60,000, $70,000 worth of engineer drawings and we'll work with you. Well, I don't see a curling center over there. I see a building that's under park because we had to build a $350,000 water quality pond that could withstand 3 times the amount of water that's going in there. And yet we're still talking about engineer drawings. There's no more engineer drawings. You know, we've done the mitigation for this property. It's been mitigated. So, you know, I don't see what all this discussion is about. If it's about not getting a variance, well, again, we are the only one in 12 years not to get one. So obviously variances are forthcoming. You know, what is it about this property that people, that I can't seem to get any cooperation from the city at all on? You know, we're over here trying to run a business. We didn't choose this business. This business was thrust at us. We are teachers. We came in there to build a curling facility, to bring a collegiate league to this city, to bring summer programs for children to this city, to bring the Olympic Committee down here, to fill your restaurants and your bars and your hotels 5 or 6 times a year. $1 million for the local economy per event. That's $6-7 million for your city. We were bringing infrastructure. We were going to put the water pipe. We were going to put the wastewater pipe up the street. We were going to facilitate annexing that street so every bit of tax dollars that came out of our curling facility went to the city of Sunset Valley. We've done nothing wrong here. But my God, like we come to these meetings and we're land-based. And you get rules that are switching. It seems rules that apply here and don't apply there. Like, you know, is this a variance process or is it not? You can't walk into a meeting and say, oh, we're just going to vote on this and not let the engineer even have a say. The other engineer, your engineer, whoever that might be right now, hasn't even had a chance to review it, and you're already deciding it's not going to happen. Like, what is going on here? I don't understand this process. You know, I may not be in public policy or what, I'm a politician, or I'm a teacher. But hell, I understand ridiculousness when I see it. This process is just, I'm just getting railroaded right over again. Where's my engineer? Why isn't he talking here? Why isn't the engineer for Sunset Valley? Why didn't he look at this before we're here? And if he didn't have a chance to look at it, why didn't he cancel the meeting and postpone it to another time when we were able to talk about this in its reality and not just some ideas that people have and throwing things around that might work or might not work? Maybe what we're proposing here will work.
Anita, could you please wind up so that we can move to the next speaker?
Well, are we going to, what is happening here? If you turn me off, I won't be able to speak again, and this will be all voted on, and the computer will be off before I have a chance to even realize what happened. So, like, are we going to vote on this tonight? Is that what's going to happen here when nobody's had a chance to look at it?
So I want to address.
Yeah. Sylvia, would you address some of what she's brought up? And yes, Anita, we have a motion on the table to deny the variance.
Okay, so this is the proposal for a portion of the parking spaces. This is what the applicant submitted. The as-built that we have for, and this is one of the reasons it was almost just negligible for us to send it to the engineering, our engineers to review it. These are the as-built for their prior development. There are sprinklers here. This is a re-irrigation field. So they're proposing to build parking lot over where their current water quality is supposed to re-irrigate. I asked a question about the septic system, which is, toward the end of the property, right? So there's a discussion of having to re-irrigate now in where the septic system is also going to have to. So the plan was flawed, and it didn't meet the other criteria, the other elements of what would have been required for the council to request a variance. If the applicant is, absolutely adamant, then I would request that it be tabled to let our engineer explain that to her engineer, whatever the council so decides. But there's some inherent flaws in the engineering.
Sylvia, so, and I've seen this happen before when items for the barn show up at council where, we post an agenda, backup is complete, it's posted. As you and I know, there's a process to that. Was this conclusion, was the analysis, was this not presented or discussed with the applicant prior to us posting the meeting?
Yes, well, the information was presented. I spoke to the applicant on Thursday afternoon. She was not happy with staff's recommendation, and I believe reached out.
So last Thursday before we posted, she knew that the recommendation was to deny the variance.
No, it was after it was posted.
Okay. And yes, Ed Moore, I do see that he is listed here, and you absolutely can raise your hand if you have something that you can speak to. Sylvia, is this a question of engineering? Because again, I don't really, the way that the backup was presented, this isn't an engineering.
It's more than just engineering. It is the 5 things that the council needs to meet. One of them is preservation and enjoyment. The other is public health, safety, or welfare to other property in the area. So based on those 2 components, regardless of the engineering and the capacity of the pond, the welfare or injurious to other property in the area. You've heard the neighbors speak about what happens onto that. Now the council could take that either way, with the parking would help or the parking won't. It's my belief that expanding the parking will end up exacerbating a problem and pushing it off for a few more years, because if the area does take off, 18 parking spaces plus what's there is not going to be sufficient to cover a green hall type environment.
Council members, public, does anybody have any additional questions? The applicant wishes to speak again. Council members, if you wish to call the question, if one of you would please raise your hand so that I can proceed with that. Anita, your engineer does not have his hand raised. You have the floor again.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. I'm going to withdraw.
And your engineer also, you and your engineer both have open mics.
Okay. I don't see any point to discussing this tonight, because the city engineer, whoever works for you right now, has not even looked at this. So for us to discuss it is useless. I've been there before with the city of Sunset Valley talking about water quality ponds, and I had to fight tooth and nail to maintain the integrity of my engineer and maintain his liability for that, because you people were insisting on putting a holes down through it. And it turned out that that was not necessary. It was literally impossible to do to start with. So to talk about a pond with anybody right there is simply not, it's useless, because I don't know how to discuss that, and nobody there knows how to discuss that. So no, I don't think that letting this go on through without any review at all and just having it totally denied is the way it's going to go. So I'm going to withdraw that right now. So there's going to be no vote on this tonight. I'm withdrawing that. This has not been handled properly at all. I handed it in exactly what I was supposed to do. And I told Sylvia myself that when we went through last time with site plans, it was one thing after another. Put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off. And it literally came down to shades of gray, where Ed Moore picked up the phone and said, Anita, they are messing with you. I had to pay him to color the shades of gray on the sheets, a proper shade of gray, because Clay Collins didn't like the one was there. That's how bad it got. So when we're submitting this, it's Ed Moore's calculations that are the important thing here. It's not whether I shaded that right on that piece of paper or not, because at the end of the day, we are looking for the amount of impervious cover that Ed Moore has asked for in his documents that were submitted. And if that has not been reviewed, then that cannot be voted on. And we haven't even talked about the food court yet. Like, why are we voting on something when we haven't even had a chance to speak about it? So I think the best thing for me to do here right now is withdraw the whole thing, because otherwise this is incomplete.
Okay, I've heard you, Anita, I've heard you. You've requested to withdraw your application. Roxy, would you please weigh in now? The applicant has withdrawn her application. We do have a live motion on the floor with a second. Could you please advise us on the proper procedure at this point?
Am I on?
Yes. Yes, you are.
So I need to look up on the code because I'm looking at the.
Do we still, Mike, I guess a more direct question would be, do we still take a vote on the, or does the motion maker also have to choose to withdraw their motion?
The motion maker would have to withdraw their motion, and there would have to be a motion in order to accept the applicant's withdrawal is
Okay.
what would be the cleanest way to do it.
Okay. So Councilmember Medicus, we can either proceed with a vote or you can withdraw, and then we can, if you withdraw, you could make a secondary motion, which is to accept the applicant's withdrawal. And Councilmember Medicus, you have the floor.
I withdraw my motion and make a motion to accept the applicant's withdrawal of the application.
Thank you. Do we have a second on that motion? Councilmember Reitz?
Yes, I will second.
Thank you. Do we have any additional input or comment on the motion, which is to accept the applicant's withdrawal? Council members, if you would all please submit your vote via chat. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. And Sylvia, if you would please read the vote back once you have a vote from everybody.
Councilmember Reeds, aye. Councilmember Metcalf, aye. Councilmember Ellett, aye. Councilmember Gonzalez, aye. Who am I missing? Councilmember Rosengarten, aye.
And I caught 4 there. Was it 5 that you listed?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously. And at this point, council members, I'm going to ask that we take a 10-minute break and we will reconvene at 8 p.m. Thank you. Sylvia, would you confirm, just do a head count real quick and confirm that we have all of our council members still online?
Yes, all of the council members are present.
Great, thank you. And Melissa, your hand shows that it's up. Did you have a technical question or something you needed answered before we start? Or was your hand just
No,
up from before?
I was going to address the issue that's coming up. I was going to make a motion on it.
Okay, great.
It
Council members, it is 8:01 p.m. We are calling back to session regular city council meeting for the city of Sunset Valley, Texas for Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. We are now moving to item number 7, which is presentation, deliberation, and adoption of a professional services contract with Ampersand Agency, Inc. of Austin, Texas, for an amount not to exceed $230,000 for marketing and branding services for the city of Sunset Valley. And Councilmember Gonzalez, I will now recognize you again. You have the floor.
Mayor, I would like to, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes,
Am I audible? Okay.
Yes,
Thank you. I'd like to move approval with a lot of changes to this contract. And I have questions I believe Councilmember Medicus also does. I'm going to start with my...
Yeah, let's start with your motion and get a second, and then we'll let you just go through all of your adjustments.
Yes. Okay.
We have
I move approval.
To approve. Do we have a second, which will open it for discussion and amendment? Again, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second, which will allow us to open it for discussion and make amendments or changes? Councilmember Rosengarten, are you our second?
No.
No. Okay.
I would like to find out what.
But do we have a second? Okay, motion dies for lack of a second. Councilmember Gonzalez, you do still have the floor. Do you maybe want to try?
Okay, yeah, I'll go with my long list.
Okay.
Here's my list of questions. Let's go pull up the document.
Contract. Sylvia, could you pull the contract open?
Yeah. The things in general that I have, I know that Councilmember Medicus had a list also, so I'm going to start with mine. Mine are all along the unique selling point, and so I have language in at least 3 locations that inserts unique selling point. So let's start with the scope of work. Let's see, page number. Let's see, the scope of work, I think, is the one I want to move to.
And Sylvia, could you maybe, because I think we're going to have maybe a small laundry list from at least 2 or 3 council members, could you maybe create a document where you can, even if it's just shorthand, a bullet list so that we can keep track of which council members asked what question, so that if we get a motion on the floor, we don't get lost in what's been recommended?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead,
Okay.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Except that blocks where it is. And I'm sorry, I can't work 2 computers tonight because I've only got one. So thank you, Sylvia. Can you go pull it, let's see, down to the top of that page above scope of work, actually? Yeah, areas of responsibility, that's where I want to start. We're item 2, where it says name and destination recognition of the city of Sunset Valley. After that, semicolon, creation of the unique selling point is after the city of Sunset Valley. Okay. Then down in the scope of work, where it has 3 in the, where did I think it? Hold on a second. Sorry, I'm having to look in 3 places. Where it says overall brand is based on a unique selling point of the city of Sunset Valley. So that would be in item number 3. Okay. Is that right? No, 4. Sorry, 4. Yeah, where it says with an overall brand initiative, and the language would be overall brand based on the unique selling point for the city of Sunset Valley. And then again, same point, because it's all about the deliverable. So on page 17 of 21, down there on 17, under specific campaigns and creative deliverables, a unique selling point for the city of Sunset Valley. And then when we have approvals, which are up above, probably around, I think, page 13. It says that things have to be approved, and I guess any place it says that. I want to know, is it the council that's approving it? Is it the mayor that's approving it? Is it the city administrator that's approving it? Because there's a lot of things where there's the opportunity for change. And I know that I heard that our attorney looked at that, but I wasn't clear from the document who was approving the changes. And specifically when there's a 10% fudge factor that they deem is already approved. So that I just want to point out that in there it says that there's a 10% that is automatically assumed approved.
Melissa, this is Roxy Stevens. Can you?
Hi, Roxy.
Hello. I'm looking at my own document, and that you're looking at Exhibit 8, correct?
Well, sadly, like I said, I can't work 2 computers right now. I'm having to, if I'm looking at what we're looking at, I have no other computer with where I am right now. So I apologize that I'm more technically limited than I normally am.
Okay, so on the scope of work, and you're looking at the approval, you're correct.
The approvals are not. Yeah, no, this was earlier in the document, I think.
Oh, then you're looking at the actual content. You bring up a good point, and I just want to make a comment on that. That who is going to be approving needs to be determined by council. I had that note to myself because the same question was asked not only by me, but ampersand as well. And so we need some clarification and direction from the council. I'm not in a position, of course, to make that decision, and it's the council that will tell us. Ultimately, the council is the one that needs to make is either giving the approval, or that approval authority needs to be delegated to somebody by council.
Okay, well, I'm going to say that I would like this to come in bite-sized pieces to make sure that that we get to do approvals incrementally. That would be my preference. That it would come to council, and because I think there's been a tendency lately in the things that have been coming to council where we're approving the entire thing all the way down, and especially in this project, because I'm not clear that the USP part is clearly put in here, and from some other conversations, I'm not sure that they are either, and so I want to make sure that that product development is the first thing that happens, and we agree on product development and what that product is that we're about to sell. Because I have every confidence in ampersand in delivering a great marketing. I'm because of this contract a lot more nervous about the creation of the product and the process for the product, and so that's why I'm specifically calling it out and writing it in. And I want to know who's in charge of the money. That's also important to me. that's, I believe, my short list. I do have some things about where I was a little unclear, Roxy, about the relationship of ampersand, and if we had another, the way this was written, if we had another advertising firm, it could have just been where I was looking. Like I said, I'm working on sort of off of one computer instead of two, and but if we had another group, if it was precluding having a different advertising firm for Art Fest, there was just some language in there that made me nervous about if Art Fest was running another one and if we were precluded from having anybody else. So some of the contract stuff looked like we might be precluded. So those are my hot issues. I believe that Councilmember Medicus also had some on her list.
Thank you. Sylvia, before I move to I actually don't see any hands up, so I'm waiting for the next council member to put their hand up. Can you move to the portion of the backup that discusses the steering committee?
Here.
Okay, and that is, just to be clear, that's in the contract, correct?
Yes, sorry, it's in the scope of work.
Okay, and my recommendation would be, if council's going to approve this, that you either just strike that, recognizing that at any point the council does have the right to create advisory committees, but to include it in the contract. I've already noticed that there's confusion from CED. My opinion would be that CED, because we don't put committees in charge of money, council could potentially delegate something to them if they want input or representation from the committee, that committee or any other committees, or a specific steering committee that's composed of different people. But that for the contract, it should be very clear that there's a point of contact, which I would think would be the city administrator, and that all decisions related to executive decisions, whether it's spending money or direction, that those would have to be cleared by council, which I think would also be helpful to the marketing firm to know that they only take direction from city administrator that's based on council action. And with that, Councilmember Medicus, I see you have your hand up now. You have the floor.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. On the master service agreement, page 2, item 4.1, I just wanted to make sure I understand what this means, where it says in towards the last sentence, variances of 10% or less will be deemed approved by the client. Are we saying that that could be up to $23,000, 10% of the 230,000? Is that what that means?
I'm reading it right now. This is Roxy.
Okay, sorry.
So if you look at the entire context, it seems that with these approvals, the approval would be in the strategic marketing plan, which should also contain the estimated budgets, which are, I believe, part of Exhibit B, if I recall correctly. And it says, if agency believes actual cost for the production projects, and this is for the production projects, subject to an estimate will vary by more than 10%, agency will say inclined to revise estimate prior to approval before proceedings. Variances of 10% or less will be deemed approved by the client. Yes, and that's so it's on the production projects. I don't believe it's the way I read the intent was it wasn't the entire project. But if we need more clarity on that, I'd be happy to draft some extra language, or we can the council can direct what they want to do about that, the revised estimate or the variances from the estimate. We can
Well,
require approval before we move forward with that.
So Roxy, in local government contracts, we're bound by what was approved. So yes, some extra language here probably gets help, but we can't ever go more than $230,000 without council approval. So I believe in this particular case, this issue for production was printing costs or commercial costs or those kinds of things. If they believe the estimate was $500 and it came in at $550, they would have the ability to approve that. But the overall budget still must remain at $230,000.
Yes,
Okay.
and that ultimate budget is reflected in the entire contract, and that nothing more is approved and nothing more has been appropriated either, that there is no more money other than what was already appropriated.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't 10% of the $230,000. Thank you for the clarification on that. So the thing that, if we go back to then on the areas of responsibility in on page 14, that was the only question I had on the MSA. I just wanted clarity on that. Okay, and then the areas of responsibility here, those 4 items at the top of this page, areas of responsibility. It's actually on page 14. If you can go up one to the, wait a minute, where are you? Yeah, just above the scope of work. Okay, so on this one on item number 3, I just want to make sure we understand that we're funding this with hot funds, and we need to make sure that we're focusing on the big picture of the city of Sunset Valley and that we're including our lodging industry. So I would suggest we change number 3 to state, improve the experience of people who visit, shop, dine, and stay in Sunset Valley.
Visit, shop, dine, and stay.
Yeah, yes, visit, shop, dine, and stay in Sunset Valley.
Okay.
Because our city is more than just shopping, it's dining and staying and then on, ready?
Yes.
On number 4, this item promotes Sunset Valley as a premier location for top line retailers. I didn't see anything in either the initial RFP, the questions that they answered in the presentation to their RFP when we selected them, or anything in the scope of work that relates to this.
Okay, and this was language proposed by Ampersand. So if you want them to identify what they're going to do with regard to that area of responsibility, we can ask them to do that.
Yeah, I think that should tie into the scope of work, because everything else in the scope of work ties up to those areas of responsibility. That would be helpful. And then let's see, scope of work. I just had, on number 3, I just had a question. The descriptions of community engagement in the original RFP, they were talking about wanting to do town hall meetings at the end of phase 1. Is that what this refers to?
Yeah, the scope of work came directly from the actual RFP that went out.
Okay. All right, and I just have one more on number 7, next page. On this implementation of the plan, to include in D, and maybe Melissa already got this, implementation plans for brand identity for City of Sunset Valley. So it ties back to all the items above.
Okay.
That was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Medicus. Do we have any other council members who want to add to things to be considered or to get clarification from staff or city attorney? And Phil, I saw your hand up and then it went down. Would you raise your hand if you're wanting to speak? Okay, and so I don't see any additional comments from council members. Do we have a revised motion to be considered, which would then open it for discussion and then also allow input from the public, which would be easier if we have a clear motion? Councilmember Gonzalez, you have the floor.
Mayor, I will move that we incorporate all these changes, and I'm open to more changes if people have them, to the contract, especially the clarification of who's in charge of the money, and then move to approve.
Okay, so let me repeat it and see if you agree. Motion to approve, taking into consideration all of the items that are listed on the screen right now, subject to final inclusion from the motion maker in the second after deliberation.
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion. Roxy?
This is Roxy. One of the things that I think we need direction from the council on that needs to be included in the motion is that we discussed it earlier, that the administrative point of contact would be the city administrator and that the council would be the ultimate authority on it was money and I can't read my notes.
That any financial decisions come back to council.
Yeah.
Point of contact. Yeah.
Oh, ultimate approval on the I guess the marketing strategy, which is what part of the contract is.
Yes. Ultimate approval. And any financial changes need to come to council.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Councilmember Medicus?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And so what we would be looking for now is of this list that's on the screen. It's a motion to accept the contract. So we need to be very clear before we take a vote. And I would say writing it and allowing the city attorney to see it before we take that vote would be the most helpful thing. So this list, if we can do any deliberation needed and make sure that it's clear and accepted by motion maker and the second before I call for the vote. And so with that, do we have any council member input questions before we move to the public? Councilmember Ellett?
Thank you. So I just want to raise some points and seek for clarification. In my own mind, I always see committees as being advisory only. Their job is to make recommendations to council and to the mayor, and upon that, the council can decide to act or not act upon it. So the financial control of the contract is the jurisdiction of the council. That's clear. We made a resolution, I think, over a year ago that said all expenditures would have to be approved by council. So I think that safeguard is built in. To the point of the 10%, I think we satisfied that, but I would never see it going that high anyway, because we would have mid-course corrections when things came to council to approve to be spent or not spent. In terms of, I try to separate this into financial responsibility and creative concepts. And understanding the creative concepts have to come to council for approval. And I think the motion maker in a second, I'll ask them, is comfortable with concepts being raised by the steering committee being brought to council for final approval from both a is this fit what we're looking for as a city, and is it financially feasible? Can I get that clarification from those two, please?
Could you
Or the
ask that
motion
question
maker?
again? Because I don't think I understood just the last part.
So in order to get creativity and get positive ideas coming forward, the role, as I see this as a steering committee, would be to put forward ideas, suggestions, that the council would then have to vote on and say, yes, that is in line with what we want to see as a city, and then it is financially within our jurisdiction. I want to make sure that they see that role as a steering committee the same way I do. Understanding, I think we all agree, that committees are advisory and advisory only.
Okay, if the motion maker and second would raise your hand to offer input. And Councilmember Ella, I know you and I spoke about this. The only problem I have is that, I'm sorry, let me keep your, we've seen the issue come up time and time again where committees it's very, very easy for committees and chairmen of committees to get confused as to what the difference between they can discuss whatever they want versus what has actually been delegated to them to make decisions or recommendations on. And so I just want to make sure if we're going to define a steering committee, council needs to be very clear who that is, what the parameters are. And to me, the preference would be don't have a steering committee, certainly don't list it in the contract, and instead say it's council. Council makes decisions. Should they want to delegate a specific decision, such as final approval on the scope of a Christmas event, council can then choose with very clear parameters something that they want to delegate to one, all committees, or to a specified new temporary ad hoc committee. But that council needs to do that in a very clear way so that we don't have confusion from committees, specifically CED, thinking that it's their job to create stuff or to work directly with the marketing firm. And I don't see, Councilmember Medicus and Gonzalez, would you please raise your hand so that you can put the context of what you intend in your motion? Councilmember Medicus.
Yes, Mayor, I agree with what you just said. I believe we have enough in here with facilitation and engagement of the community that we're going to get a lot of creative ideas and feedback from the whole community. And if we do need to send something to a committee or committees for review or feedback, that it be done in a very specific way with parameters.
Councilmember Gonzalez, you also have a hot mic, and Roxy, so do you. So all of you, and Phil, Councilmember Elliott, you do too. So all three of you council members and city attorney can discuss this openly.
Before we move on, what I'm hearing is that I guess what's being proposed is the deletion of the steering committee provision. Is that what I'm understanding, Council Medicus?
Yes.
Emily,
correct.
okay.
And I think that it's fine for council to decide to have a steering committee, which is to say an ad hoc committee, to advise on various advertising type issues that we send to a certain group of people. But clearly the authority, and I hope we have this in very clear chunks coming back to council. I'm a little concerned. Roxy, do you feel like there are clear stopping points where things are going to keep coming back to council in terms of money already written in? I think there is, but I want you to tell me that there are.
So there is already an anticipated schedule of items with estimated budget that is part of Exhibit B. And so that I would, what we need to get, I guess I need to get with Ampersand and make sure that they understand that there are different points of this project that need to be approved by the council, and along with that, the monetary items and financials to be approved by the council for each phase.
I think that's very important that we have that, because in one place that I was reading, and like I said, it was kind of hard to do this on one computer and go back without being able to go back and forth, that there was a rather big chunk of change that was going out, and a large commitment on our part, whereas they could bail at pretty much any point. And so that felt just the way I was reading it. And like I said, I couldn't go back and forth as well as I would like to have. That part, I don't know if I'm reading that correctly or not, but I would like to make sure that it's more congruent, that everybody is moving forward together and everybody can bail at the same place if they think something is not working, rather than we're having to put up a whole bunch of cash and they can bail whenever they want to. I just want to see that there's equity in that, in both, that we're making decisions together and making financial commitments together. Thank you.
And to address that, that was one of the big items that on my red lines in negotiating with Ampersand and their attorney, was incorporating that into the contract.
Okay. All right. Well, that's, as long as we have that clearly stated, and we have clear points where we're all agreeing that we're doing everything, and we're having, checks that are balanced, I'm happy. And Phil, did I answer your question, Phil?
Yeah, thank you. That was my question. Councilmember Ellett, was your question answered and addressed by the motion maker in the second?
Yes, I think so. Let me just add one point that I made asked to be incorporated and was incorporated as a safety net measure here. When we go into a contract, the intent is we're going to honor the contract and everything is going to work out. But there is a clause in there, and it was shortened to 90 days. After 90 days, we can exit by giving 30 days no fault termination notice. I think that gives us some safety here. If at the end of 90 days they don't like us and we don't like them, I don't think that's going to happen. But that is another safety measure that we have in there, should we say, hey, this is not working the way we thought it would work. So I'm glad that was put in. I'm glad that was changed. I just want to add that as a safety measure that we have in this contract.
Right.
This would be a question for staff, and then for motion maker and second to indicate if they want to clarify anything. I don't know if this would apply to the contract, but taking, for example, what we saw with the farmers market this year, part of the problem isn't the contract and the intent of the parties at the time that they contract. It's making sure that we actually have a staff member who is paying attention to what is either in the contract to be enforced, or later down the line, for example, if council approves an ad campaign, what do we need to do to make sure that staff is absolutely ensuring that what council approves is what gets executed? Because that's not going to be something that a committee or council is good at doing.
Good point.
Well, Mayor, they're going to have to trust their city administrator. And I believe, just like the Mobile 311, that there are some monthly reports that the council is missing of critical information that they believe is absolutely important. This is a big one.
So right in what you just said, is that maybe a good recommendation that council officially say that they want some sort of formal reporting where it obligates staff to provide something to council, whether it's once a month, once a quarter, that allows that opportunity.
Report is absolutely essential to be put in there. I mean, if you look at the project timeline, it's broken out by months anyway. So there's definite measurables there. What should have been accomplished in the month and how much money should have been spent in a month. So yes, that's an absolutely reasonable request.
Would the motion maker and the second agree to include that, and not so much the contract, but in what's being approved tonight, that staff have to provide that monthly report that allows council to question and get affirmation that things are being followed?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Council members, do we have any additional comments? And if not, I'm going to open it up to the public. John Popola, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Rose. I have a couple quick comments. First, I want to just on behalf of myself say that I fully support the elimination of the steering committee mechanism to be replaced directly with council. The reason for this is that the fundamental steps that are going to start first with this process is going to be trying to develop a story about the city, about what the city has to offer, and how to position that offering to the public and to potential customers and potential visitors to the city. And since council is elected by the public, by the citizens of the city, I think only city council is really in a position to have agency on these matters. They are going to be contentious. You as council are still going to be a challenging client from the agency's perspective, because you each have different tastes and sensibilities and concerns and visions for the city. But that would be equally true with any committee you might form. And you as the city council members have been elected by us to represent our interests, however imperfectly that process might go. So I am 100% behind you. You have my backing and support in that decision. I think it's the right decision. I want to emphasize a couple things, though, that what that decision brings. The first is the cadence of important decision making might not align with your monthly meetings. So I don't know what that will mean procedurally for city council, but I think if this is a decision you're going to make now, I would ask you think about or identify how you're going to resolve being potentially out of sync with key decision moments throughout the process with the agency, such that that you can arm yourselves to all weigh in, reach consensus or majority or whatever through whatever mechanism, and provide the agency with actionable feedback to keep the process moving, because you're now taking on that burden of needing to make decisions as a council. I think the best first step in that, as you engage with the agency, is going to be some form of a kickoff work session. That this sort of formal format that you have in these city council meetings is, I don't see how it would work. So I don't know, as someone who's new to participating in city government in the way I have, I don't know what other mechanisms you have that are consistent with transparency and the rest of the constraints you have on yourselves, but you should find a way to give yourselves the chance to have a free-flowing work session with the principals of the agency and get aligned on when the most important moments are that your collective feedback needs to be heard from them, and how to line that up with this schedule as it's set forth. I think if you do that effectively, and if you can align those schedules, I think you're maximally set up for success. And then I think Sylvia will have a clear spine on which to hang her efforts as the point of contact. I'll just also say I'm here in support of the process in any way I can, but I think you're on the right track here, and that's all I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional comments? And then for the motion maker in the second, if you would raise your hand if there's any last clarification you want. The only thing I would say in response to John's statements, which I agree with, however, council meets 2 times per month and has a mechanism to meet in addition to that if needed. So probably of all of our existing groups, they have the more consistent meetings and a higher quantity of meetings, in addition to the ability to create additional meetings if needed for an emergency decision. Councilmember Ellett?
Thank you. Yes, I take the responsibility that the council is going to have here very seriously. And along John's comments earlier, I would like us to give some thought as to the materials, reports, or whatever that could be made available to council so we can make informed decisions. To John's point, we don't, this may not be the number one thing on every single council meeting, despite the significant importance here. So I would like to see some thought put into, this is the reports the council has been given, these are the updates, that we can look at this and get to know things are on track, things are going the way we want them to go, or, they're going off track. And, I would just like to see that in some type of regular report. So am I asking staff to give us a regular report that identifies that? What the content of that should be, I don't know yet, but I thought if, people can put their heads together, whatever it needs to be, so the council can have a concise reporting mechanism so we can honor our duty year in stewardship of this contract.
So Phil, while you have the mic, the motion maker and the second have already added that part of the requirement of a vote of acceptance tonight would be that staff provides a monthly report. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah.
So that's included in the motion.
Okay. And hopefully that detailed reports that will give us a very good overview.
Yes, I would imagine the way it works is you'll get the report and then council can, with each month, say what they think is missing and make requests if there's additional information they want in future reports. Councilmember Medicus and Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think John makes a really good point. And as part of the recommended timeline that was in Ampersand's proposal with the onboarding and building the historical knowledge, there's a timeline being finessed and agreed upon, and the approach and direction confirmed, along with the strategic direction alignment. So I think that that's a real critical time for us to work with Ampersand and make sure that we're all on the same page and we're getting what we need to make the decisions we're going to have to make throughout the process.
And Mayor, I think when you're talking about what John said, and is that you're essentially, when you're signing on to this, I think we're signing on to having a 2-week-in meeting. After we hit this, we're looking at a workshop at the 2-week point for the onboarding. I think, I don't see how it would work well without having that meeting, that workshop with council, so that we can all say we're on the same page.
And when you say work session, you mean where we have an independent special called meeting? That's the only topic. Yes. Right.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
And John, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I want to one other just piece of advice, which I don't know if council was all present in our last committee meeting, but one of the things I just want to warn you all about as you embark on this is an impulse that I think is very natural, happens in every engagement of this sort. And that is that the early stage of the process is going to be light on deliverables that feel like a thing. And it's going to, if they're doing their job well, hopefully it's going to be heavy on insights, some of which might seem obvious when they're delivered, but like so many things that are in the creative space, a lot of times the obvious thing only feels obvious because of all the work that went into it. And so I would just say, having spent the time to vet these firms, and you really did have a fantastic number of quality firms to choose from in this process leading into the selection. Now's going to be a time early in these first phases to be vocal, but then also to trust this process that will sort of be accelerating over time, but starting slow and starting with a lot of digesting everyone's opinions and perspectives, digesting data and research, presenting that back, playing that back for you, the council, in what will be a series of presentations that will start to feel repetitive. And the other warning I want to make, and I'll bring this up again because it's having been on the agency side and on the client side in these kind of engagements. Given the time frame, there will come a moment where decisions that had been made will start to feel old and the desire for new will happen because everybody naturally likes new. And what I'll just ask you to remember is the public will not have seen anything. And so there's a thing that happens in this process often where, you know, you've been working on an ad and it's or a campaign or a tagline or whatever, and you start to think like, okay, well now we got to come up with something new. It's like, and the problem is it hasn't gotten out into the public yet. So you will live with this for a much longer time than the public will see it. And so those are my two sort of words of caution to just sort of temper expectations and set yourself up for success. Is those, you will probably feel these things, this desire to get to it and let's see some stuff, and this desire to see change before anyone else has even seen the first iteration of the final product. And that's all I wanted to add. I think these are just sort of battle scars I wanted to share with you all.
Thank you. Do we have any additional comments or input before we call for the vote? Council members, if you would please cast your vote in the chat, and Sylvia, if you would please read the vote back. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Okay, have Councilmember Reitz, yes. Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Ellett, yes. Councilmember Rosengarten, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. We are now moving to our next item, and actually we are approaching 9 p.m. I assume that we will be going until 10 this evening, unless there's a council member who feels differently. Could we have a motion and a second to extend our meeting from 9, not to go later than 10? Councilmember Reitz?
Yes, I will make that motion.
Thank you. Councilmember Medicus, are you our second?
Correct.
Thank
Second.
you. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Aye.
Aye.
We have an aye from Councilmember Reitz and an aye from Councilmember Medicus. Sylvia, would you please read the other 3 votes once you have them?
Okay, Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Ellett, yes.
Do we have Councilmember Rosengarten's vote?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. We will extend not to exceed 10 p.m. Hopefully we can get through our last 4 items. Item number 11, should we accept it as an executive session? So council members, I would ask that we reserve enough time to be able to do that executive session. Item number 8, presentation with possible deliberation and action for a plan forward with dates, timeline, and cost for a best case scenario for the lift station. This is an item that was requested to be brought back, and so hopefully staff can provide a simple summary and recommendation.
Mayor and Council, Travis is on the line in case you have any questions. Essentially, we've been asked to review the lift station and bring forward what's going to be in the best interest of the city. Things are not as simple as when this lift station was first discussed as needing repairs. You can see within the 1920 budget, there was about $34,000 that was budgeted. And at that point, we were thinking it just needed some pumps and it just needed some minor electrical work. Well, deeper detail shows that that's not exactly the case. There are multiple issues that the lift station needs addressed, one of which is to make it more safe for our staff, our existing staff, to not have to go in and remove some of the things that end up in lift stations, which are nasty. But also not just repairing and upgrading a lift station. Now comes future development in that particular area. We do have an approved zoning case that was approved. We need to understand the impact of that development into the lift station. And also, as we look at beyond a post-COVID world and we look into the future 10 and 20 years of what development begins to look like in our areas, those are some of the things we need to also evaluate for the lift station. So what you see in the backup is a preliminary engineering proposal that is $82,000. And I've been asked, why is it so expensive? And that's the main reason, is I am asking the engineers to do essentially 3 options back to the council to tell us and to allow the council the opportunity to make those decisions. There will be some impact to the development that is at the corner of Stearns. The developer's already been put on notice that he will have to pay some impact into the system for what they're doing. But how much of that, considering we don't have an impact fee ordinance, and also, again, what other future development lies in that area? If the hotel is rebuilt and there are additional rooms, or there is an additional retail development that goes in around us that also has more space, all of those are things to consider, which is why you see this engineering cost what it is. Travis, did I leave anything off? Carolyn, did I leave anything off?
No, I think it's about, I mean, the proposal it has all the preliminary things. It has in the collecting all the data, doing the analysis. It has in there the flow and analysis that will also be part of the kind of preliminary work. There's a lot of surveying that needs to happen. And as Sylvia mentioned, a major component of this is going to be electrical, and that currently the power, it just doesn't have the power to operate. And we're going to have to make some different changes there.
Travis, anything you'd like to add?
No, Sylvia, Carolyn, you and Carolyn have summarized that quite well.
Thank you.
Okay, I will open it now for council members. If you have any questions for the staff presentation, Councilmember Ellett.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. So I guess the $82,000, almost $83,000, gets us a plan that takes a design somewhere into the future so we're not caught short by developments and additions and so on. And I assume if that plan comes back and we approve it, we are then going to put into some type of fund the maintenance, repair, and upkeep of what will be an expensive item, so that we're not caught short again by building something and not budgeting for the maintenance and upgrades of that as we go along. So that's just a statement. If I look through this estimate and the fees, there's one number, this is a small number, but I'm going to ask the question. We're paying $75 an hour for an admin person? Only $10 an hour less than a CAD technician?
I'll let Travis answer that.
Councilmember Ellett, the rate schedule that's proposed here is the rate schedule that's in our standard master contract with the city. It's just it's a carryover.
Well, it's a bad carryover. It's a high carryover. I can't believe we would be paying an admin person $75 an hour. I have no question about the other fees. I understand what a CAD technician costs. Believe you me, I've hired some recently, and I understand an engineer, but an admin, I'm not going to make a big deal of this. I just want to bring it to people's attention. $75 an hour. I assume it's an outstanding admin person.
Well, this rate at that $75 an hour for an admin is not really out of the ordinary. It's we use these same rates on our City of Austin schedule, or our City of Austin rate schedule. It's a standard rate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional council questions? Councilmember Reitz, and then I will recognize Councilmember Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So at the end of this $82,000, we have a plan, which I don't quite understand how we would have the engineering. I mean, is this a plan to rebuild, or is it to build a whole new one, or is this a plan to rehab our existing situation? Because either one of those are changes in engineering, I would think. If we're just rehabbing and buying new pumps and doing some various other things, I'm guessing the firm we get the pumps also have an electrical panel and such. So I'm a little confused on the engineering, I guess, on the electrical engineering. And I guess what is at the end result of the 82,000, what exactly do we have?
Councilmember Reitz, this is, I would categorize this as a retrofit project. It's more than it. To try to answer that question, it's not just maintenance. We're not just switching out new components for old components. It's more trying to optimize the design without trying to basically blow up or reset, we're not removing the existing lift station or replacing the entire infrastructure. We're trying to utilize some of the existing infrastructure, some of the hardscape components of the infrastructure where possible. You'll end up with a new pumping system, a new alarm system, a new electrical system, but we're going to try to utilize the existing manhole and some of the existing other hardscape type improvements, if that makes sense.
We may have a depth issue, right, though, Travis? That's what the surveying piece is for.
Yes, that is an issue that could influence how it's restructured. Yes, the depth issue.
And what would you anticipate the next phase of cost being, the actual buying of the new equipment and installing all this new equipment?
I don't have that number in terms of construction cost. I don't have that at this point. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Right. Do you know what pumps cost?
Pumps vary wildly depending on how the design ends up picking out.
I think part of it is also going to depend on us as well, council member, is from a as Travis is calling it, from a retrofit rehab. We're going to have to make some decisions on, is this one adequate? Do we leave this as is, and then we need to find another site for a lift station, maybe something that's more appropriate or something that handles something else? I mean, there's going to come a point in time where this station is already maxed out, and it's from what I understand, we're already pretty much at that point right now, and adding any additional to it, you know, we're going to have some problems, which is why we are talking about depth. We are already talking about capacity, and we're trying to do it early on where we can make some of those decisions without spending the money until it's absolutely necessary, and we have good informed data to make those decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Okay, I'm going to ask it a little bit like Councilmember Reitz did, but a little bit different. So walk me through this, Travis. You know, I'm a fan. You know, I've been working in military a long time, and I love military, but I got some problems here. So at the end of this deliverable, I'm going to come up with 3 options from you. What are you delivering me?
We're delivering the preliminary design for possible retrofit options to the lift station. And it could present a range of improvements to try to give the council options on what would suit their future needs.
Right, but can you be a little bit more specific? So I heard you say that, and I didn't miss any of that. But I'm looking for a little more specificity. So it's a remodeling project. Remodeling projects are a real pain. You break a lot of blades, as my first husband, who was a carpenter, said, when you do a remodeling, because it's harder to do than to just build something from the ground up. Got that. So what are we trying to build in our retrofit? We're looking at something, a short fix. We're looking at one, if we, the parameters that you're going to be thinking about for this retrofit are a leased case, doing the hotel and what we think is on the ground right now, and then we're looking at future expansion. Is that the way you're organizing? That's what I'm looking at. What you're thinking about what you're trying to do, or you're saying, Melissa, it's a retrofit. It's so difficult to even figure out how we're going to get those pumps to grind and solve the existing problem. That's really all we're looking at. That's what I'm trying to get clear from you as to what it is you think you're creating in your deliverable.
I think it's more along the lines of that of your first explanation there, where we're trying to. Right now, you have a dilapidated lift station, and we're trying to retrofit that to suit the city's future needs, and that you wouldn't experience the problems that you currently have at that location.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out my other one concern that's in here. Again, with great appreciation for our long history with Miller Gray, and the fact that I voted 100% that I thought that they should be it. I still don't like the idea of Miller Gray supervising this project without a staff point, and I just think it's a bad form. And so in that contract, I like Miller Gray, but I don't want to pay them $160 an hour to supervise this and to be the point of contact for the city. I would prefer Daniel is. And I'm going to say that because of the problem that we have over on Ruth Dawson's property, where now we didn't have a clear scope that we can say that staff directed the engineer to do this. And so what I'm hearing is that we have a problem because of that. So I really do want a staff point of contact directing this, not Miller Gray directing Miller Gray. All right, that's good for me.
Councilmember Daniel will be the staff point of contact, will be the staff liaison for this project.
Okay, well, it didn't say that in the contract, and so I want it said in the contract that there's a staff point of contact.
Councilmember Medicus.
Okay, so just to reiterate, I want to make sure I'm understanding. What's coming back to us, Travis, is three options for how to retrofit this lift station to take care of the current inadequacies, and three options for how to retrofit it to meet our future needs. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Ellett.
Thank you. I'd like to build on something Council Member Reed said. So, and I understand this may be a circular reference here. We're being asked to approve $82,000, almost $83,000 for a project that we don't know what the cost will be. Is it going to be $82,000 as part of a $500,000 contract, a $2 million contract? And I know the rhetorical answer will be, well, we don't know how big the contract is until we spend the $82,000. But it's a little tough to understand what portion of the total, tab that will be. That's the first question. The second is a statement. We're going to come back with 3 plans to retrofit, and I quote the comment, a dilapidated system. Has there been a cost analysis done? Should we build a new system on new land? And what would be the cost of that over 20 years or whatever period we want to pick versus the retrofitting of quote unquote a dilapidated system? There is no doubt in my mind we need to do something about our lift station. No doubt whatsoever. But I'm wondering if that is a worthwhile analysis that says, this is the cost of a new system versus retrofitting, quote unquote, a dilapidated system.
Councilmember Ellett, are you asking me a specific question of should we look at that, or did we consider that?
I'm asking the first question, did we consider it? Second question is, should we consider it?
That it has been an idea that's on the table, is to redo or just completely scrap the pump station and do another one. But that's not the direction we've gone. That is still an option that's on the table for council if they elect to go that direction.
And sorry, Sylvia.
I'm sorry. The roundabout numbers we've been throwing around for a new lift station is, in the 600 plus range. Don't know what a retrofit rehab, but we can certainly take that route. There will still be some engineering expense, and you can give Travis an opportunity to come back with a new fee estimate that does that. Is a rehabilitation retrofit / upgrade versus a whole new lift station.
And could we factor in the cost over, a 20 or whatever number you want to pick, or whatever makes sense, lifespan of a new system versus a retrofit?
We most certainly could, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So it sounds like most of the council is uncomfortable with the cost and the direction. So I would ask that you send us back with Councilmember Ellett's specific direction on give me pricing for rehab retro versus new, and allow council to make that sort of decision as opposed to trying to work a square peg in a round hole in the current lift station.
And council members, if there's, please raise your hand if you want to add to what Sylvia just said, and if not, I'm going to move to take input from the public. Councilmember Gonzalez.
I'm agreeing with Councilmember Ellett on this, but I'm going to elaborate a little bit more. I feel like if we had a part-time staff engineer, that they would be coming up with a couple of rehab options, and the proposal for, just as Councilmember Ellett suggested, that those would be like the three things that would already be coming to us on the table, and universe numbers as Councilmember Reitz suggested. And I just want to be really clear that would be what I would expect, and what I'm used to seeing from staff actually historically. And I'm very uncomfortable with open-ended proposals that have been coming to council where I don't know what the top numbers are. And I'll leave it at that.
Sylvia, did you want to respond to that before I move to the next commenter?
Well, I will just say, Councilmember Ellett's comments from the last meeting, you had a public works director, and we are in some pretty difficult pickles now.
Councilmember Reitz.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would like to see kind of a total scope of project. I think where our struggle is we all think this is very important. There's no question about it. I think we were looking at that $34,000 thinking, why haven't we done this already? And so this was a little bit of a shocker when you have $82,000 just for a design and a study. And it's without really understanding what the total cost is and what's all involved. I would also like to understand what future development we see. I see the lot on Stearns that the zoning change happened. possibly the lot next door. Are there other areas there that may change? I mean, I don't know. There may be some rebuilt things, that's true. So that would be interesting to look at too. So, and then the last question I have is our existing piping and infrastructure, that in that sense, will that be analyzed also?
As far as, and I'll let Travis answer the engineering question, but you're right. 34,000 was in the budget, and 34,000 was kicked down the road several years. With the public works engineer, with the public works director on board. I'll just caveat that. The second part to the question is, there are properties very much, Kelly Legal Group, for example, that was a residential property, but they're zoned highway commercial at this particular point. Kelly Legal Group is actually even going through a remodel at this point. It's just the propensity for what is on 290 for highway commercial development, especially given the fact that we are just in the item before this talking about impervious cover and impervious cover calculations and how we can become, while still meeting impervious cover needs, be more flexible in our code with our businesses. So I see that along 290. In our retail spaces, what you see in the Domain, what you see in Kyle, Buda, what you see in a lot of Central Texas is you see mixed use, those uses that are pedestrian friendly and driving folks into centers. And some of that is a mixed use residential. So I think at some point down the path, as our shopping centers reach the end of their useful life or begin to transition through, I think we will at some point discuss a mixed use component in those. And so again, it goes back to our water discussion earlier on about, is it in our best interest to take on bigger customers or not because of what we're going to have to serve today and in the future. And in the same vein for the lift station is looking at things from a not just a current micro perspective of what I need so the guys aren't having to dish out towels or use, whatever rods they can get to get the poop out of the baskets and things. But what are we going to need, longer term? Because it's bad to spend money and then spend it 2 and 3 times over. I'm happy to go back with Travis and come back with a modified direction on what the council expects. Don't have any issue with that.
Sylvia or Travis, or for both of you, either in this consideration or as we're comparing repair versus build anew, have you all considered the force main and new gravity flow?
We have looked at some of those issues, Mayor. Right now we're trying. It was talk. Are you asking? Did we look at trying to redo some of the gravity line leading to this lift station to see if we could redo the elevations? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, well, it also just to the point of what Sylvia just made, also just to make sure that as we're repairing, we're not repairing based on an older version of Sunset Valley, just accounting for everything new that has come in since I don't actually know the last time we did significant repairs or significant replacement, better stated.
Right. No, you're correct. This is really an effort to modernize this lift station.
So
yes, Councilmember Reeds.
Just from my point of clarification, what area exactly does this lift station serve?
This lift station essentially just serves the area. It's not a very large area, but it serves that area on the essentially the north side of 290. Sylvie, do you have a map of that handy?
I'm going to pull it up right now. Let me move my map.
And Travis, I'm going to try to better articulate my question also in a minute. And if there are any other I do see Charles Goyette. I see that you have your hand raised. If there's anybody else from the public who wants to speak, if you would please raise your hand so that we can get you in queue to get through the end of this.
Okay, so here's the lift station. It's serving this area. This is feeding into it. Travis, do you want me to take some elevation shots? What do you want me to do?
I don't know how to best describe this here remotely. Are you able to draw a polygon from here, Sylvia?
Yep.
Or
yep. Tell me where to start.
All right. Sylvia, would you have the ability to unmute Sam Shorter? He's with Miller Gray also. He's standing by, and he can kind of help guide that polygon of where that service area could go.
Yep. Sam, you're unmuted now. Yep. Looks like he stepped away from this.
Sam, can you hear me?
Yeah, they're fucking, we put out this sky high proposal and they're shredding it on the front of city council right now. And Travis is trying to babble through it.
Oh, Travis. The beauty of virtual.
Hey, and Travis, while we're there, I'm actually gonna, Jay, you are unmuted. If you could better qualify the question that I posed to Travis. Yourself muted. Jay Hargrave, could you please unmute yourself and ask the question that you had submitted?
Dude. He's self-muted.
Yep, I see that. And then for anybody else who has an open mic, if you just remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking.
Let's go,
so I'm gonna go through. Okay, Travis, I'm gonna move. Are we still waiting for something from Travis, or do you want me to move to the next speaker, Sylvia?
Sam? No, we're not waiting for Travis or Sam anymore.
Okay, great. Charles Goyette, I'm going to move to the next resident, and then I'll circle back around to Jay. Charles, you have the floor.
Yes, good evening. Hey, hats off to the city council members because you were reflecting so many of the questions, the problems I had when I looked at this proposal. And yeah, it rightly deserves to be shredded, in my opinion, because it doesn't say anything. It just creates a whole pile of questions, and it begs the question of, for me, where did all this stuff come from? Who's running the show? Who's generating the requirements? What are the requirements? And that's what I'm hearing city council ask in their own way. You know, the expense, you know, it seems very expensive. Carolyn mentioned, you know, something about the power, not enough to operate. Operate what? That lift station has been in operation for some time, right? Now, I'm on the Public Works Committee. I should know how to answer many of these questions, all of these questions, and I can't answer any of them because unless I was sleeping through the meetings, the Public Works Committee didn't get involved in making any of these specifications to determine any requirements on what we were looking for, you know, how this was all going to transpire. So, you know, so that's my number one question. I'm an engineer too, and a design doesn't happen until requirements are generated. And I don't hear these requirements. I hear them ad hoc coming from the city staff, but they're not the requirements generators. That requirements generation should come from the committee, I would think, or at least the committee should have, Public Works Committee should have some say in this matter, some overseeing, some comment, right? So yeah, so where are the requirements? And I'm just looking at my notes right now. Yeah, I'm looking for specifications. Sylvia talked about 3 options. These options need to be present in the proposal. And, so we can, I hear what City Council is saying. What I think they're saying and what I'm saying is this is not ready for prime time, and it has to go back to the drawing board. It has to come back with much more detail. It has to come back on a much more low-cost basis, or no, not low-cost basis. We need some high-level definition on what options we have the ability to take, and some very rough estimates on what that will entail for costs. That can be done without spending $82,000. Okay, so I mean, back to the drawing board, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Alfonso Carmona.
Hello? Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, I have 4 points. The first point is that is together with, we have 7 residents, and we don't know if we will have the annexation. If we will have the annexation, will be other 6. So we don't know at this moment what happened with that annexation. If we will have that, also we need to start thinking in the easements for some of that public utilities lines. So it's something that we don't have that. In addition, if we will do the annexation, that is a cost. But in a few words, if I was teaching this for some students of engineering, the first thing I will go as a simple way. What is a simple way? What is the flow that will go there? So we have rates of flow for residents, for business, and the type of business that we have. We have a hotel, a restaurant, we have 3 offices, and we know more or less as a peak how much flow that will go to that lift stations. At this moment, we know that it's a very old lift station, so it has very bad and very old equipment. So the lift station has 5 feet deep diameter. So with 5 feet diameter and 18 feet deep, so it has some problems because perhaps we don't have too much volume than we can storage, and we need to have other type of pumps. So, but with that kind of dimensions, that gave it to us some idea if the flow is able to be working with that size of that lift station, because perhaps we need to build some extension of that lift stations or other type of lift station. Well, looking in that way, the electrical part in 1991, and nobody was doing any improvements, was a single phase electrical. This is something that we don't use too much with this type of lift stations. We use 3 phase. So we don't need to we don't need to do any invention. It's logical. We have to change to 3 phase. So the electrical is logical. If we have to change to 3 phases, the pumps that they have at this moment, they are not bad, but they are single phase. So they are very difficult to work when they have a lot of suspended solids or plastic or something, because they clog the pumps. They say, well, you can go to other cutter pumps, etc. The best way is to go to 3 phases. So the pumps that you have at this moment, each pump costs over $8,000, $8,500 each pump. The 3 phases, they will be in the same way. The only thing is we have to change all the electrical panels. So if we have to change all the electrical panels, we are looking over $60,000. And in pumps, over $20,000. We need to replace the rails. The rails is where you move the pumps. So in that way, when the pumps, they are not working, the employees, they don't need to go down. They have some rails and some hoist, and they leave the pumps, the piping. So that lift station at this moment, a priori, engineering, they can do one preliminary study about what I am talking. and they suggest $9,000. So you can invest $10,000 and you can have all the information that I am giving to you. And after that, you can do some ideas. Well, we need to use the land, and they need to study the elevation of the pipes, the gravity flow, and the force main. It's some information that we need to have. But this will be another extra money. But with $10,000 a priori, you can have a better idea if we can do it or we cannot do it. I made a little calculations. So I was looking, if your lift stations, you don't use this, it's 18 feet deep. You don't use the first 6 foot because it's the level of the water, the high level, for example. And the pumps, they are 2.5 feet high. So you cannot use 8.5 or 9 feet of that lift station. So you have only 9 feet extra. So 9 feet extra is only 1,300 gallons. So it's able 1,300 gallons capacity to be playing in peak times. Well, it's something that they can do at this moment, the engineers, and they can provide information and they can say, with 5 feet diameter lift station, you cannot make it. You have to extend capacity or we have to build another. Now, for safety, we have to do a lot of safety improvements. Fencing, we need to fence that. We need to have some road. So do we have some electronic equipment as a SCADA? We don't have nothing of that. So looking, $82,000 is $55,000 of engineering, mechanic, principal, $17,000 electric engineer, and $6,000 for the land. So if we split all of that, I don't believe that we need to spend all of that money at this moment. They need to work, in my opinion, more, and we need to refer to them. Then we don't need at this moment ideas, because if we have a new lift stations, it can be over $600,000. Oh, it can be more than that. Okay, but I hope that they understand that. It's much better to use a gravity line. If I was looking that, I will check on that lift station. Maybe I can do a gravity line tied to the city of Austin. And in that way, I will avoid that lift station. This is a goal that they can have. And this is not so expensive. And we can save a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn, did you have something you wanted to add? Carolyn, did you want to add something before we move to the next speaker? I lost you, Carolyn. There you go.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes. So I just wanted to follow up on kind of what Alfonso was saying, is that what we're asking for is to go through, I guess, task 1 and 2, that preliminary engineering phase, that would be part of that gathering information and getting everything that we need to be able to present the actual solutions that, like Alfonso was mentioning, what it is that we need to do. So that is listed in the documents as about $9,000. It's a little bit more because we would need the surveying work and a few other things to make that happen, so that we can present the information that you guys are wanting to see.
Thank you, Carolyn. Jay, Jay Hargrave, you have the floor.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
If you have two, if you have two items, mute one of them. There you go. Now we're not getting the echo.
Okay.
Nope, still there.
Is that it?
I don't know. Try.
That I've deleted everything.
Okay. Do you have a phone that you're connected with too, or two computers?
I don't, but I could call in.
Okay. Yeah, we're still getting an echo.
Even now?
Yep. Yep. Okay, I'm going to move to the next speaker. Councilmember Ellett.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to go back to something I thought I heard earlier, and maybe clarification, maybe it's my poor hearing. Someone asked for what was the service area for this lift station, and Travis then asked Sam to answer. And I thought I heard Sam say, Travis is given a sky-high bid and he's getting shredded. Did I misunderstand?
Councilmember Ellett, this is Travis. I was trying to get Sam in on the line so he could address that issue. He was frustrated because his audio was not working on his computer. And he was expressing some frustration. I'll have to have a conversation with him separately. But
Travis, you may understand why, and certainly I've been a victim of hot mic, but you certainly would understand why that doesn't give me a very comfortable feeling. Would you?
I understand, sir. Yes. At this point, Councilmember Ellett, I am with permission of council and Sylvia, I'd like to reapproach city staff, work closely with city staff to address some of the issues that council has and bring this issue back before you in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And Carolyn, I showed your hand is still up. Did you have something else you wanted to say, or is that up from before? Okay, thank you. It looks like you lowered it. And then last speaker, Jay, will try again. Are you still gonna?
I'm still here.
Yep, we're still getting. Sorry, we're getting too much echo. So council members, do you want to take action this evening, or do you want to table and bring back? How would you like to handle the item that we have in front of us? Councilmember Reitz?
I would table and bring back.
And Councilmember Gonzalez, are you our second?
Mayor, I want to also have input from Public Works. I keep being disturbed that these things don't get run by Public Works before they come here. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. It ought to go by Public Works before it comes to council. Thank you. Yes, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, which opens it for discussion. Any additional input from council members or anybody else? If so, please raise your hand. My biggest question at this point, which is I just want to make sure that as we're budgeting and even creating the mayor's budget, because it doesn't look like this is something that's going to be addressed in this fiscal year. So I would just want to make sure that staff gives the correct allotment, even if it's a conservative amount, to make sure that we have the money we need to do this right once we do establish what exactly needs to be done. Okay, and seeing no other comments, councilors, if you would please cast your vote in the chat. All those in favor say aye, those opposed say nay. And Sylvia, if you would please read back.
Councilmember Gonzalez would like you to reread the motion.
Can you read it back, Sylvia, or do you need the motion maker to do that?
The motion maker, I understood it to be tabled to bring back alternatives to the council by working closely with city staff.
That's what I understood too. Is Councilmember Rosengarten satisfied with the readback, or does she have a question?
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Oh. Sylvia, is there somebody who needs to be addressed, or have all questions been answered?
Councilmember Gonzalez, are you now more clear on the motion?
Councilmember Gonzalez, you were unmuted, so you can, if you need something else,
Well,
let us know.
I guess my friendly amendment is it also goes to Public Works. That's my friendly amendment that I hope that the other person will take on.
I think that's fine.
Thank you.
So are we going to take the vote again, or because that's now an amended motion?
So yes, would you please repeat the amended motion, and then I will call for a vote.
To have the engineer work more closely with city staff and bring back an amended proposal, as well as taking this to the Public Works Committee.
Councilors, please cast your vote via chat. And Sylvia, if you would please read the vote back. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Okay. I have Councilmember Ellett. Actually, Councilmember Rosengarten, yes. Councilmember Ellett, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Reeds, yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. And Sylvia, my impression is that the Chasco item, it's going to need at least 20 minutes, if not 30. Would you disagree with that?
That's correct.
Okay, so council members, at this point, if we're having to make a choice, I would suggest that we table item number 9 and 10, as those are not related to something as significant or urgent as the Chasco legal issue. So if I could have a motion to table items 9 and 10 for the next meeting. Which will then put them at the top of the meeting.
I will make that
Councilmember Reeds. Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Councilmember Rosengarten.
I don't understand why we couldn't get through 9 and 10 in the next 5 minutes.
I am confident that 9 is going to involve what I had positioned to just be a historic update. I think got confused in the public as being an action item to take action on parking, which really is not intended until a later date. And so I do think that that item will end up taking longer than 5 minutes. And we're now at 9:40. And I want to be able to give the Chasco item the time it needs.
Number 10, I think we can get through at least number 10 in 2 minutes. I agree. I make a motion that on number 10 that we approve the additional.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? So the motion is to table items 9 and 10 so that we can move to the Chasco executive session. Councilmember Gonzalez.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please cast your vote. This would be to table item 9 and 10, which would put them at the top of the next meeting. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. And Sylvia, if you would please read the vote back.
Councilmember Rosengarten, no. Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Ellett, yes. Councilmember Reeds, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes.
Thank you. And so now we are looking for a motion to go into executive session. And for any of the public who are in the room, the last item that we have left on tonight's agenda is executive session. And I don't anticipate that there will be any action after that, but if you're staying online, it would be only to hear if there's any follow-up to the executive session and or for us to adjourn.
So Mayor, for the council members, I'm going to create a breakout session. You'll see something on your screen here shortly. It will only be for the council members and legal counsel.
Correct. So you don't, we won't be taking any action. Is that correct?
Correct.
Councilmember Reitz, are you motioning us into executive session?
I am.
Do we have a second? Councilmember Gonzalez is the second.
Sure, second.
Councilmembers, thank you. Councilmembers, please cast your vote. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Sylvia, please read it back. And if so, I will then announce us going into executive session.
Councilmember Reitz, yes. Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Elliott, yes. I don't have Councilmember Rosengarten yet.
And so I will call us into executive session at 9:41. And Sylvia, if you would please give us whatever instruction the council members need in order to go into executive session. Oops, sorry, we lost you, Sylvia.
You will see a notice on your screen that's going to invite you into breakout A. You don't need to do anything other than listen and hit join if it comes up, but it should not. I'm going to start it now.
And where should we be looking for it?
Should be right in the middle of the screen. 1 minute.
Thank you. And so we are now back out of executive session, and the executive session ended at 10:21. And I see that we have Councilmember Medicus.
Motion to adjourn.
Councilmember Rosengarten, you are second.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember, all those in favor, please submit your vote via chat. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Sylvia, please read the vote back, and if so, I can call the time.
Councilmember Medicus, aye. Councilmember Rosengarten, aye. Councilmember Reitz, aye. Councilmember, Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes.
Great, thank you very much. It is 10:23 and we are now adjourned. Thank you.